those values and principles. He put Abby Johnson front and center. That was the most vivid and passionate abortion message I have heard in my adult lifetime, and it took Donald Trump to deliver it to the American people.
Yeah, I mean, as a great fan of Ronald Reagan, it really is hard for me to say that we have the most pro-life president since Roe v. Wade in Donald Trump, and that's just a statement of fact.
Yeah, it always felt like Mitt Romney, John McCain, and George Bush, fine men. I don't mean to disparage them, but they always seemed like they did just enough or said just enough to secure the loyalty of the pro-life base, and then they didn't want to talk about it again. They never. But here, I mean, I was just struck by Abby Johnson and how powerful that was.
Yeah, all the speakers were incredible, but that was truly something else.
We are live now at Townhall Media across all of the Townhall family of sites, and of course on our YouTube and our Facebook Live as well. I'm Larry O'Connor, senior columnist at Townhall, and of course the man next to me needs no introduction, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, a former administration official in the opening years of the Trump administration, and now of course nationally syndicated radio host on our partner Salem Radio. Dr. Gorka, Seb, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
I suspect we would have been in Charlotte together doing this exact same thing. And of course, we couldn't do that. But here we are. We're both in D.C. And it turns out the convention, for all intents and purposes, is also in D.C. Hey, we're at halftime. How do you think days 1 and 2 have gone?
Look, first day of the convention, I was tweeting madly, on various speakers from Charlie Kirk on down. And then I caught myself and I stopped and I just, went to the 20,000 foot perspective. And I realized, and I tweeted this out, I said, I've been one of the harshest critics of the establishment Republican Party over the years, especially in the last 4 years when they really didn't have the president, my boss's back, or my old boss and now my new boss again. But they just walloped it out of the park. I mean, look, the bar was so low with last week with this, high school Glee Club Zoom project that the Democrats put on, which was just pathetic. I thought the left owned Hollywood. I mean, how was it just such a garbage convention? It just doesn't make any sense. And then along comes the RNC. And I'm sorry, from John Voight's first 2-minute, VOG to Charlie Kirk to Maximo Alvarez to the First Lady last night. I tell you what, Larry, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party, and there is no going back.
Yeah, that's well said, and I think that you're right. He's left an indelible mark, certainly on the way we present our ideas, which I agree with you has always been lacking. And boy, we always win on substance because we are right about freedom and liberty and the intrusiveness of the federal government getting in the way of all of those things in our economy and free market. But we always had trouble selling it. As my late great friend Andrew Breitbart used to say, if you can't sell freedom, you really suck. And we really sucked. We did.
Yeah.
So now what are you looking forward to tonight?
Look, Kayleigh McEnany is a warrior princess. On my show, America First, we are regularly joined by Senator Marsha Blackburn. So I cannot wait for that pistol to talk tonight. But at the end of the day, let me share with you, we were watching yesterday's speakers, and my wife, Katie, who spent 3 years in the Trump administration, just looked at me and she said, you know why I like this convention? Because I'm getting to know my fellow Americans through the convention. Forget, the cabinet members, forget the first family. I mean, that business owner with the coffee shop, that farmer, the Cuban refugee who came here as a child under the Peter Pan system. That's our story. That's the American story. And to have a political convention talk about the American story, I just want more of that, Larry.
Yeah, spoken through the eyes of the American people. That's such a great point. Instead of Donald Trump or Seb Gorka or Tucker Carlson going on the podium and attacking the media, he found the teenage boy who was the victim of the media, and told that story through that young boy's eyes. And I'll tell you, they talk about suburban parents making the decision in this election. As a suburban parent, I saw Nick Sandmann, and I recognized that could be my son that was victimized by the media.
Can we just stop for a second? I feel really bad we didn't mention Nick Sandmann. He's what, 18? Look, you and I, we talk for a living. I spent 20 years teaching the military. I'm happy to have 500 guys in front of me who are snake eating bad guys and talk to them for hours. But I could not do what he did. Age 18 yesterday, man alive, was that incredible. Nick Sandmann, I see a great future ahead of you.
And tonight, by the way, talking about young people and a great future, young Madison Cawthorn, 25 years old. He won the Republican nomination in North Carolina for Mark Meadows' former seat. And he was appointed to the Naval Academy and was tragically injured. He's been in a wheelchair since the age of 18. Should he win this seat, Dr. Gorka, he will be the youngest member of Congress in American history, and he's a Republican, and we'll see him tonight. This whole idea of talking about our future and showing the Republican Party looking forward versus looking in the rearview mirror, it's such a contrast to the Democrats.
It truly is. There couldn't be a greater contrast, Larry. You look at the 8 hours of cheap infomercial that was the DNC convention, and what was it? It was just grim. I mean, from Michelle Obama lying about who put the children in the cages to just the exploitation of race, of divisiveness, seriously, they had that long hagiography in the middle for John Lewis about the civil rights movement. Sorry, this isn't the 1960s DNC. This is 2020, and we've got things like the coronavirus to deal with. So they are so stuck in the past. And Larry, what's the best exemplar? 330 million Americans. And who do they choose to lead their ticket? An old white man who's been in politics for 47 years. The Democrat Party is a joke. I'm sorry.
Sebastian Gorka is with us to lead us off at 8:30. The gavel will hit the podium, although that's just a metaphor. There will be no gavel. But the convention will begin. We'll get you your live streaming coverage right here with ongoing commentary. Chris Stigall is coming up. Ed Morrissey is coming up. Kurt Schlichter is coming up. Seb, as a person, I know. We all get nervous.
Hey, have you got the dumb button ready for Kurt Schlichter?
Yeah, exactly. You literally wrote the book about the war on jihad and about the existential threat of radical Islamic terrorism. How meaningful was it to have our Secretary of State, not just in Israel, not just in Jerusalem, where our new embassy is located, but in the city of David, with the Wailing Wall behind him over his shoulder? That was so powerful, Seb.
It's just another example of who Donald Trump is. Let's be clear here. I shared the story with an event at the Trump campaign today. People forget this. American presidents promised to do what Donald Trump did 23 years before he came into office. And Republican presidents, Democrat presidents broke that commitment to our closest ally in the Middle East twice a year for 23 years. Twice a year, the then president had to sign a waiver saying, sorry, guys, we know we promised we're going to move the embassy. We know we promised you we're going to recognize Jerusalem. And 46 times the incumbent president broke our promise to Israel. When my boss, President Trump, came along, only 3 members of the cabinet supported him in that decision. And when that fateful day came, do you know what the president said, Larry? This is who Donald Trump is. He said, you know what? I promised the American people in the campaign that I'm going to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy. I promised our closest friends in Israel that I'm going to do it. Oh, and thirdly, it's the right thing to do. That to Donald Trump is. And to see Mike there from Jerusalem making that statement last night, it tells you everything you need to know about who's in the White House and who's on his team.
Well, and frankly, if I can just add on to that, it tells all of our enemies in the Middle East,
Yes.
the enemies of Israel, it tells them exactly who's in charge too. That was not just a message to the American people, that was a message to the world. Seb, also tonight, listen, we're going to have Vice President Mike Pence. We had Mike Pompeo yesterday. We had Nikki Haley. We had Tim Scott. These conventions traditionally are kind of auditions for the next go around. You know, they're a way for politicians to sort of let the party know, you know, I could be your next nominee. Anybody stick out to you yet so far, or is it too early to even think in those terms?
I'll just say two things. I don't want to see Nikki Haley again. She's a swamp creature, and I have to educate people on my show every day. Yes, she was in the Trump administration. Yes, she said the right things about Israel. But look at what she said before the president became the nominee for the GOP, what she said about Mr. Donald Trump back then. And then also, and I posted it on Twitter yesterday, look at who she was pallying with and taking photographs with after she left the administration, yucking it up with John Brennan, Obama's director of the CIA, a man who was crucial to the illegal surveillance of our campaign in our White House. So, Nikki Haley, no thank you, goodbye. But people I'm excited about, number one, Kim Klacik from Baltimore. Oh my gosh, that woman, that young black conservative woman is just going places, and I think she's got a shot. And then the other one, which is this is obvious to anybody who's got a pulse and is breathing. I think Donald Trump Jr. has taken to politics very, very well. So I see a political future in the president's son's medium to long-term future. So I expect him to be getting even more involved.
Wow. That would be interesting. And you might even have some inside information on that, considering your relationship with the administration. So we'll take that to heart. All right, Seb Gorka, I know that you are waiting and excited about tonight, day 3. So I'll let you go to it. I appreciate you joining us, and we can't wait to hear all of your analysis tomorrow, as always, on your nationally syndicated show, America First, there on the Salem Radio Network. Thank you, Seb. Always good to talk with you. Enjoy.
Thanks, Larry. You can check out my website, sebgorka.com. Say hi to Chris and tell Kurt to behave himself.
Oh, I absolutely will, and he will not listen. He'll ignore me, and he'll say something about Bill Kristol. Thank you, Seb. I appreciate it. All right, let's reset. It is time. We're about to begin here with our live stream of the Republican National Convention. In fact, Micah, if it's begun, go ahead and pop it up, and we will, yes, here we go. Let's go ahead and watch the opening video, and then we'll be joined by Chris Stigall.
From Washington, D.C., welcome to the 2020 Republican National Convention. Tonight, celebrating America as the land of heroes.
Almighty God, we come before you this evening and pray for your divine protection over our brothers and sisters in the path of storms along our Gulf Coast. You are our rock and our shelter in the midst of the storms of life. You are the God who commands the winds and the waves, and we pray that you will provide refuge to our people. O Lord, you have granted us certain natural rights, such as the right to speak freely, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, as well as religious freedom, the right to assemble, and the right to self-defense. Only in America have these God-given rights so flourished and been categorized as belonging to the people, embodying the very essence of our government. Father, we pray that this outlook and mindset, this form of government continues, as has been our history, especially now when, to our horror, it is being challenged. And so we pray that God gives strength and health to our president, who has splendidly demonstrated daily his determination to defend and maintain the God-given rights of our citizens, as enshrined in our Constitution and in our Declaration, eloquently passed down through our Judeo-Christian tradition. President Trump has stood up fearlessly against those who are corrupting the term social justice so as to deny Americans their birthright and these divine gifts. May God protect him. May God bless all those in government and among our citizens who seek to honor, defend, and preserve our heritage. This land was founded in an epic and providential moment. Like the revelation at Sinai, it was the moment when the vision of God rendezvoused with the soaring and noble plans of appointed men. Yet, every so often, apace various generations, we are compelled to resurrect and give rebirth to our providential beginning, to renew our present days with the exuberance of those founding days. Perhaps that is what is meant when we say, "Make America great again." We pledge to vigilantly protect and tend the garden so as to imbibe its blessed fruits. May God continue to make America great, and may we continue to be His people, one nation, under God. And let us say, Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'm Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. I'm here tonight because I believe America is an exceptional nation, founded on three principles: equality, freedom, and opportunity. But today, our founding principles are under attack. This year, the choice for Americans is between a man who values these ideals and all that can be built because of them, and a man who isn't guided by these ideals, and coincidentally, has built nothing. Remember, America's battle for independence and fight for self-governance was something that had never been done before. Men of great intellect and wisdom, like James Madison, the father of our Constitution, hoped our constitutional republic would last for ages, mitigate the problems that would naturally arise from political factions, and prevent tyranny. Madison also authored much of the Bill of Rights because he understood the natural tendency of government to increasingly encroach on the people's consent, and thus our freedom. He urged his colleagues to adopt these amendments to enshrine in our Constitution the ideals laid out in the Declaration of Independence, that all power comes from the people, that the government is created and ought to be exercised for the benefit of the people. Our Constitution guarantees the right to speak, to assemble, and to worship, the right to arm ourselves as a counterbalance to a standing army, and the right to a fair and equitable criminal justice system. We must fight to protect these foundational rights from government interference and indifference. America is unique in the world. Government's power at all levels is limited to the confines of our Constitution, which protects our God-given liberties and civil rights. We are not and will not be the subjects of an elite class of so-called experts. We, the people, are the government. Now, at times, our country has struggled to live up to our founding principles. Another great American, Abraham Lincoln, knew that struggle better than anybody. When he was just 28 years old, Honest Abe saw wild and furious passions worse than savage mobs, he said, taking the place of reasoned judgment. He was alarmed by the increasing disregard for the rule of law throughout the country. He was concerned for the people that had seen their property destroyed, their families attacked, and their lives threatened or even taken away. These good people were becoming tired of and disgusted with a government that offered them no protection. Sound familiar? It took 244 years to build this great nation, flaws and all. But we stand to lose it in a tiny fraction of that time if we continue down the path taken by the Democrats and their radical supporters. From Seattle and Portland to Washington and New York, Democrat-run cities across this country are being overrun by violent mobs. The violence is rampant. There's looting, chaos, destruction, and murder. People that can afford to flee have fled, but the people that can't, good, hardworking Americans, are left to fend for themselves. The Republican Party's commitment to individual rights and self-government is as necessary today as it was in 1860 when we won our first presidential election. Our party respects individuals based on who they are. We don't divide people based on their beliefs or their roots. We don't shun people who think for themselves. We respect everyone equally under the Constitution, and we treat them as Martin Luther King Jr. wished, according to the content of their character, not the color of their skin. In just 4 years, President Trump has lifted people of all races and backgrounds out of poverty. He shrunk government. He put money back into the pockets of hardworking, ordinary Americans. He has advanced religious liberty. He protected the Second Amendment. You can look back 50 years. You won't find anyone that has surpassed President Trump's success on these 4 issues alone. History chooses its heroes for the time in which they live. At our founding, Madison was one of the chosen. When the nation's very existence was challenged, it was Lincoln's turn. Thanks to these men, America is a land of hope. Their examples have been repeated in countless ways by simple Americans following their conscience. But there is another American hero to be recognized, and that is the common American. This is who President Trump is fighting for. He's fighting for you.
I'm Scott Dane. I represent loggers and truckers in Minnesota, but I also represent a way of life. Logging's been a part of the great American story from the beginning. In fact, if you go to the Capitol Rotunda and look up, you can see loggers on one of the panels, New England settlers carving out a new world from the wilderness.
All right, let's bring in Chris Stigall from AM 990, The Answer, Philadelphia's finest morning show host. Really, I think at this point, when it comes to talk radio, the only morning show host left in Philadelphia, but he's still the best. He joins us now. By the way, I'd be remiss in not reminding you, Chris Stigall is of course, the author of Uprising. Who the hell said you can't ditch and switch? The Awakening of Diamond and Silk. I very much suggest that you get that. Great job on that book, Chris. Chris, you made the mention the first night of the Republican convention that there is a common thread here, and that is everybody on stage is absolutely drop dead knockout gorgeous. And we began with Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. This is not by accident, Chris. This is not by accident.
Oh man, we're
a little glitchy. See, I brought up this Diamond and Silk tradition
of. I love that we have a. I don't know if you heard me. We have a proud. We have a proud tradition of beautiful Republican women.
We have a proud tradition of beautiful Republican women. I think you said. All right, let's do a reset on Chris and make sure that we can get a strong signal from him. And actually, as Governor Noem said, part of the presentation here is the common man. And I've promised myself tonight that when the regular, just everyday Americans jump in here and give a speech, I'm not going to talk over them the whole time because we should hear a little bit more from them. This is Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She's not a common man, so we'll continue talking, Chris. It was pointed out to me.
I have this common man on the show tomorrow morning in Philadelphia, by the way.
She's fantastic, actually. I love Marsha Blackburn. Did you notice last week Joe Biden spoke for 22 minutes off of a teleprompter without making a complete and total fool of himself? And they treated him like he had just delivered the Gettysburg Address, right? And think about this. Yesterday we had a lobsterman from Maine gave a better speech than Joe Biden did, and there's hardly any mention of it. That's actually an interesting dichotomy here, I think.
Yeah. No, I think an actual lobster could have given a better speech than Joe Biden.
Yes,
frankly.
exactly. Yeah.
Can we be sure? Has anyone confirmed that? I'm actually very serious about this. Can we be sure that wasn't pre-recorded? And I'm honestly asking. No. Do we know for a fact he delivered that live?
No, there is no way to know for a fact unless somebody reveals it, unless it leaks. That could have been take 30. Right? It could have been. I watched it again. I do think that it was live to tape. I don't think it was edited, though. I didn't see many edits. It was a full presentation. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, again,
but my God, it's a pretty low bar.
Well, that's right. The man's been in politics for 50 years, doing nothing but reading speeches. If you can't read a pre-written speech that you can rehearse. After 50 years of being in public life, there's something terribly wrong with you. You're more sick than we thought.
Right. And meanwhile, Nicholas Sandman, an 18-year-old just out of high school who has been thrust into the public eye, was more riveting and more, effective in his remarks than that career politician. It should be noted.
Yeah. How about a Slovenian immigrant who speaks one of 6 languages, English not being her first, and having that massive platform last night and looking as dignified and decorous as she did?
She had a massive platform, all right. Chris, I wanted to ask you.
What the hell's wrong with you? Why did you turn into Henny Youngman all of a sudden in night number 3?
I don't know.
You getting tired?
I gotta tell you. What was the big response from your callers this morning? Were they? I got a lot of reaction to Abby Johnson, the former Planned Parenthood official, and a huge response from the Attorney General of Kentucky. I thought he was incredibly effective. What was your big takeaway last night?
Yeah, I'm with you on Abby Johnson. I think. In fact, I talked about that again today in my podcast, which I hope people will go download at chrisstigall.com or wherever you download podcasts. Abby, we replayed that. I'm not sure everybody got the full thrust of that speech, and it needs to be heard. I don't know. I mean, we watched it here. You and I did together. So Town Hall viewers saw it. I don't know. Did that air on most networks? Do you know?
What we discovered, Micah did some research. CNN did run it, believe it or not. ABC and NBC did. MSNBC did not. MSNBC would not have their viewers hear anything. And you know what I noticed today? They fact check everything in the convention. I mean, everything. They'll fact check the introductions of people, right? And of course, fact checks these days aren't really fact checks. It's a difference of opinion. Nobody fact checked Abby Johnson. Because to fact check Abby Johnson today, if CNN were to fact check her speech, they would have actually drawn attention to her speech. They would have had to run parts of her speech to fact check it. So they just ignored it.
This morning on Morning Joe, I actually tweeted this photo out. I monitor MSNBC, CNN, and Studio just because it's entertaining to me. I like to watch all 3 of them in tandem just to see what the 3 of them are doing. Here was the Morning Joe hot take on the RNC convention last night. They were talking about Larry Kudlow's speech, which we sat and watched together last night here. Kid you not, the Chiron read. I couldn't hear the commentary, but here's what the Chiron read. Larry Kudlow, hang on, let me find it because I want to get the verbiage just right. It made me giggle aloud. Yes, Kudlow uses past tense to refer to the COVID pandemic. Kudlow uses past tense to refer to COVID pandemic. To which I said, they up next an alarming number of dangling participles in the 2020 speeches. I mean, it's just so, what are we doing, Morning Joe? What is that?
Let's check in. Let's check in with Representative Dan Crenshaw, not only an important rising star in the party, but also represents a district about to get hit by a hurricane.
People that have sacrificed time and again for our freedom and the freedom of others. That's something no other country ever, anywhere, can claim. Since 9/11, I've seen America's heroes up close. Some of them saved my life. Some of them saved many others' lives. Many of them never made it home. These heroes acted as if the whole struggle depended on them alone, as if any weakness on their part would be a reflection of the whole nation. That's called duty. And America has a long history of it. Our enemies fear us because Americans fight for good, and we know it. It gives us strength. When our heroes are trusted and equipped, then freedom prevails. The defeat of ISIS was the result of America believing in our heroes, our president having their backs and rebuilding our military so we'd have what we needed to finish the mission. The cowering of the Iranian regime and the restoration of the deterrence once lost is the result of America believing in her own might again. But America's heroism isn't relegated to the battlefield. Every single day we see them, if you just know where to look. It's the nurse who volunteers for back-to-back shifts caring for COVID patients because she feels that's her duty. It's the parent who will relearn algebra because there's no way they're letting their kid fall behind while schools are closed. And it's the cop that gets spit on one day and will save a child's life the next. America is the country where the young military wife with 2 young children answers the unexpected knock at the door, looks the man in uniform in the eye, and even as her whole world comes crashing down, she stands up straight, she holds back tears, and takes care of her family, because she must. This is what heroism looks like. It's who we are, nation of heroes. We need you now more than ever. We need to remind ourselves what heroism really is. Heroism is self-sacrifice. It's not moralizing and lecturing over others when they disagree. Heroism is grace, not perpetual outrage. Heroism is rebuilding our communities, not destroying them. Heroism is renewing faith in the symbols that unite us, not tearing them down. You see, America is a fabric. It's woven from the threads of history's best stories, best attributes, and greatest ideas. The American spirit reflects the oldest and most important virtues: self-sacrifice, courage, tolerance, love of country, grace, and passion for human achievement. We can decide right now that American greatness will not be rejected nor squandered. As the American founding was grounded in individual liberty, so will be our future. But if we are to rediscover our strength, then it must be an endeavor undertaken by each and every one of us. We must become the heroes that we so admire. America was built by them, and our future will be protected by them. It will be protected by you. So God bless America.
All right, Representative Dan Crenshaw out of Texas. This is Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He is National Security Advisor to Vice President Pence. By the way, I'm told tonight that Vice President Pence will be delivering his remarks from the battlefield, I believe the Antietam battlefield in Maryland, battlefield from the Civil War. So the whole theme tonight is American Land of Heroes, and there's going to be a lot of talk about the military and national security, an issue that Republicans tend to do very well with, I would say.
Yes. Did you like the use of Mike Pence last night? After we ended at least our portion of the evening, I went back inside, turned on the RNC, and watched that video montage tapping into Vice President Pence's old broadcaster skills. An interviewer, a moderator, a radio host. Did you notice that? I liked that very much.
Yeah. He's a very good communicator. It's funny because he fits the role of vice president, or at least he's playing the role of vice president in a very sort of stiff and measured way. But you're right. He was a radio talk show host on WIBC in Indianapolis, where our mutual friend Tony Katz now holds court on a daily basis. And
never heard of him.
He's damn good at it. I know. I'm just being overly generous to him. No one's ever heard of Tony Katz. Chris. By the way, I just want to remind everybody, Chris wrote this fantastic book about Diamond.
Yes, Larry.
Uprising. Who the hell said you can't ditch and switch? It's the awakening of
That's
Diamond
right.
and Sarah. Have you had? I love them so much. Have you had them on to talk about the book? They are terrific.
Oh, absolutely I have. I adore those ladies. Yes, in fact,
They're the
our
best.
colleague Larry Elder is going to be doing, I think, a video chat with them about their new book here soon. Just had them on last week.
Oh, that
on
would
the
be great.
podcast,
That
available
would
at
be great.
chrisstigall.com or wherever you download podcasts.
All right. God's sake. We're also going to hear from tonight Lou Holtz, former college football coach for Notre Dame University, and you know, he's that. I know people be oh gosh, who cares about a football coach? It's that kind of appearance at these conventions that actually does sort of move the needle a little, doesn't it? Because he's not a politician.
Well, anyone who says who cares about a football coach, I just ask you, look at what the NBA is doing tonight, slitting their own throat over a rapist.
Yeah.
Really bizarre times. So, I mean, I think anybody on the left better be very careful about criticizing anybody from the world of athletics or celebrity. I mean, since that seems to be the only cachet they have.
Do you? I'm sorry. I'm told that my audio is a little rough tonight.
You're good now. It was rough for a minute or two. It got ugly. You're loud and clear.
All right. We have a not to be insensitive to those in the Gulf states where there is a category 4 hurricane rolling through, but we actually have some thunder and lightning activity knocking us around a little bit here in the mid-Atlantic as well. So I apologize for that. And some of the glitches that we are having, this is the nature of the beast when you're doing live streams, as we saw with the Democrats convention.
Yeah, to give you some clarification on what people heard, Larry, when you and Kurt and I do it, you know how sometimes Kurt Schlichter sounds like he swallowed his microphone and it's halfway down his larynx?
Yeah.
That's how you sounded there a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Oh,
it's that
okay.
sound.
Yeah, sorry about that. I understand. Thank you for that.
But it's fine now.
Really, a very interesting article at Townhall today from Katie Pavlich, Chris, that basically said if you're looking for a Trump bounce out of the convention, it's kind of already happening. Just midway through this convention, the national polls are tightening and very important state-by-state polls are tightening, if you're looking at this. And most of the movement is from independent and Black voters. Do you think that's a real thing?
Not only do I think it's a real thing, I have not made any predictions because it would be stupid to make predictions about the presidential election, given where we've been historically, and I've been terribly wrong on the last two. But I'm prepared to make one prediction, and you can go ahead and note it. And I don't know, you'll have to call me out on November 4th if I'm wrong. I predict this week Donald Trump just won Wisconsin again. Oh. I haven't any doubt about it.
Now,
thank you, Kenosha.
Yeah, you think while Kenosha is burning and the message is coming out of this convention, Wisconsin's like, yeah, we're not going to risk handing this off to Joe Biden, who won't even condemn the rioters.
I think is significant, right? I mean, I don't know that everybody. I mean, Hillary didn't go to Wisconsin, but not for nothing. That's not a state that was a gimme the last time, and I still don't think it's a gimme. I think that upper Midwest, that Michigan, maybe even Minnesota, Wisconsin trifecta, I feel very, very positive for President Trump up there.
Well, let me, just in terms of the electoral math, because I've kind of committed some of these states to memory, just as if Donald Trump wins, let's say he wins everything that he won last time, obviously he'll be president. He can afford to lose any of those, or any two of those three states, Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania, and he will still win the presidency. In fact, Wisconsin has the smallest number of electoral votes, 10. If Donald Trump wins every state he won last time, and he loses Michigan and Pennsylvania, he will hit 270 electoral votes and win the presidency, as long as he holds on to Wisconsin. So, yes, that means something.
Yeah,
it's very important.
Yeah, and I can almost promise he's not going to lose Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania and Michigan. I'd take that to the bank too. I'm not saying he'll win them both. He's not going to lose them both. I feel that confident about that too.
Chris Stigall, I know that you were dazzled by the presentation of Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. I don't know if you were actually following the content of her speech. However, she spoke quite a bit about COVID-19 in a very oblique way. She was talking about how we are a nation of citizens. We elect our leaders to lead us. We are not to be led by so-called experts, is how she put it. And I think that's a very effective message too. Joe Biden has said the big thing he'd do differently than Donald Trump is he'll do whatever the experts tell him to do. That's not what we want in a leader.
No, I was talking with Hogan Gidley this morning. You know Hogan well, former deputy press secretary at the White House. Now he's the press secretary for the campaign. And he said, you know, a president has to listen to a couple of different people. When somebody says there's an airborne virus that's going to cause a pandemic, what should we do? Ask the president. The medical professionals are going to say, lock it down. You can't lock it down. You'll kill the economy. And somewhere in between, a president has to decide how to thread that needle. That is what leadership is, and that's exactly what President Trump did. And by the way, not for nothing, Dr. Fauci and his entire team have all gone on the record to say every time they've been questioned by both Democrats and Republicans on the record, on radio shows like yours and mine, I've never heard one of them, not one time. I don't know you, correct me if I'm wrong. Have you ever heard any of the experts say Donald Trump didn't do what they recommended or was obstinate or didn't listen? He's done everything they've asked, everything.
That's
to my knowledge.
That's right. That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And when pressed, the one thing Dr. Fauci would say is, listen, I haven't gotten all I've wanted, but that's because there's other considerations that we have to take into account, like the economy, like people living their lives. You know, if Dr. Fauci ruled the world, yeah, we'd still be in lockdown and we would never shake hands again for the rest of our lives. But if Fauci wants that, maybe he should run for president. But by the way, I want to give you a quick preview of what's in store. We started with Dr. Sebastian Gorka to preview things, and you'll catch that on the replay if you want. He was terrific as always. Chris Stigall starts off with us. We're going to move on to Ed Morrissey soon from HotAir.com, and then we'll finish things up again with Kurt Schlichter later this evening on our live stream of the Republican National Convention, day 3, excuse me. I want to go back to one other thing that Kristi Noem said. With regard, and this actually had to do with both the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has hurt cities, but also the riots, the arson, the looting, the lawlessness. She said, those who are wealthy and can afford to flee the cities can do that, but the rest are left to suffer in the city. That's, I mean, so important in terms of what Democrats have been talking about and saying, right? I mean, that to turn this into an elitist thing. Andrew Cuomo's concerned that millionaires are leaving Manhattan and going to the Hamptons. It's like that shouldn't be your concern, pal.
Right. You know, I talked about it last night. I think here, sorry, some of the 30 shows I do a day are now running together, Larry. Forgive me.
Yes, a lot of commentary.
But I think the Seinfeld article in the New York Times basically taking issue with the concept that New York City's dead now. And I forgot the gentleman's name that wrote it, but he effectively said we can't recover from this thing. And Seinfeld wrote this kind of, by God, we're tough, we're New Yorkers, and we can spring back, and we'll always spring back. And again, that's the talk of a billionaire. Well, I don't know that he's a billionaire, but he's several hundred over millionaire, who can leave on a whim, who can take a private jet out of there anytime that he wants, doesn't have to fear for his security, doesn't need to work another day in his life. So it's fine to wax philosophical and romantically about New York, but there are people that are quite literally trapped there and have no income and no living. It's Night of the Living Dead there. For average people who don't have incomes or not much of an income. So, yeah, I mean, wealthy elite people, they still don't get it. You know, Phil Murphy in New Jersey, Larry, just proposed yesterday in his new budget a new tax on millionaires. That's all that's left in New Jersey. Who the hell would stay?
Right. All right. I think we're going to be joined now by, let's go to Kayleigh McEnany, who's really made a name for herself this year. Let's hear her.
You may know me as a supporter of President Trump. But tonight, I'm here to share with you how he supported me, both as a new mom and as an American with a pre-existing condition. When I was 21 years old, I got a call that changed my life. It was my doctor informing me that I had tested positive for the BRCA2 genetic mutation, a mutation that put my chances of breast cancer at 84%. It was the same mutation that my mom had, compelling her to get a preventative double mastectomy, removing her breast tissue, but protecting her from a disease that has taken far too many of our mothers, our sisters, our friends. In my family, 8 women alone were diagnosed with breast cancer, several in their young 20s. I now faced the same prospect. For nearly a decade, I was routinely at Moffitt Cancer Center, getting MRIs, ultrasounds, and necessary surveillance. During these visits, I crossed paths with brave women battling cancer and fighting through chemotherapy. They were a testament to American strength. They are American heroes. On May 1st, 2018, I followed in my mother's footsteps, choosing to get a preventative mastectomy. I was scared. The night before, I fought back tears as I prepared to lose a piece of myself forever. But the next day, with my mom, dad, husband, and Jesus Christ by my side, I underwent a mastectomy, almost eliminating my chance of breast cancer, a decision I now celebrate. Breast reconstruction has advanced remarkably. While it is an individual's decision, my doctor and I chose a course of surgery that left me virtually unchanged. But more important than physical results, I developed a strength and a confidence that I carry with me. During one of my most difficult times, I expected to have the support of my family, but I had more support than I knew. As I came out of anesthesia, one of the first calls I received was from Ivanka Trump. As I recovered, my phone rang again. It was President Trump calling to check on me. I was blown away. Here was the leader of the free world caring about my circumstance. At the time, I had only met President Trump on a few occasions. But now I know him well, and I can tell you that this president stands by Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, President Trump called me this morning. I spoke with him several times today, and he told me how proud he was of me for sharing this story. The same way President Trump has supported me, he supports you. I see it every day. I've heard him say the hardest part of his job is writing to loved ones of fallen soldiers. I've seen him offer heartfelt outreach to grieving parents who lost their children to crime in the streets. And I've watched him fight for Americans who lost their jobs. President Trump fights for the American people because he cares about stories like these. I have a 9-month-old daughter. She's a beautiful, sweet little girl. And I choose to work for this president for her. When I look into my baby's eyes, I see a new life, a miracle for which I have a solemn responsibility to protect. That means protecting America's future, a future President Trump will fight for, where our neighborhoods are protected, where life is sacred, where God is cherished, not taken out of our schools, removed from our pledge, and erased from our history. I want my daughter to grow up in President Donald J. Trump's America. Choosing to have a preventative mastectomy was the hardest decision I ever had to make. But supporting President Trump, who will protect my daughter and our children's future, was the easiest.
That takes a lot of courage to tell that story and to lay yourself bare like that, Chris. And by the way, she is
she's not keen to talk about that. If you've interviewed her before, she doesn't like talking about that. I've tried to ask her about it. She doesn't like it. She won't talk about it freely.
Yeah. And of course, she is the target of some of the more vitriolic hate and despicable commentary from the political left and the leftists in the media. I wonder if they'll just shut their mouths tonight, or they'll still go after her. I mean, they're shameless, so they probably will.
You know, the thing about these stories is, do you know that these are done? And I forget who told the story. Again, they're kind of running together, and I hate that. But every time you hear a story of someone having a moment of compassionate interaction with Donald Trump, it also is meant to show his humanity. But these are the first times you're hearing it. And it's not a reason. They're not asking you to vote for Donald Trump because he's this empathetic figure. This was all the basis for voting for Joe Biden last week. Vote for Joe because he's grieving. Vote for Joe because he's had people die in his family. Vote for Joe because he's sad all the time. Vote for Joe because he really has the sads and feels sad. That's not Donald Trump. They don't talk. I mean, Donald Trump, again, I said he could have and he hasn't, to my knowledge. I don't know that he's going to, other than Eric Trump last night. He just buried his brother, for God's sakes. I know you're close to your brothers. That's hard. That would be terribly difficult. And there'd be ample reason to not even want to do this. Trump doesn't run around whining and telling everybody about the sad state of affairs of conversations and things he has with people. Melania Trump said it last night. I go to bed every night with so many stories that I hear on my mind. And I thought, what a beautiful sentiment. And I don't doubt that's true. But you don't hear that from these people because they're not gratuitous that way. Like Joe Biden, who's constantly telling you, vote for me because I'm pitiable or something.
One thing I want to note here, and I'm not sure, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it, and I've just texted a couple of my sources in the party. Representative Lee Zeldin was from New York, was scheduled to speak. He was supposed to be after Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the National Security Advisor to Vice President Pence, and before Tara Lee Myers, the woman that we saw who was the advocate for school choice. And for some reason, we have skipped over Representative Lee Zeldin. I will try to find out and get you information on that and get to the bottom of it. This, by the way, of course, is the wife of Vice President Mike Pence, Laura Pence. And by the way,
they might have strapped him for time.
Karen Pence, excuse me. You know, they made such a big deal last week about how Dr. Joe, how when she was vice president, she continued to teach, right? And they were asking if she'll teach. You know, our current vice president, our current second lady, also teaches in a school on a regular basis. No one ever talks about it unless they want to bash her because she's teaching at a Christian school.
Yeah. Homophobic school, you mean, Larry, where she teaches homophobic art.
Well, it is biblical. By the way, I don't think there's such a thing as homophobic art. I mean, by definition, isn't all art kind of gay? I mean, let's face it.
You'll have to ask Guy Benson about that. I don't know.
All right, let's check in with Karen Pence here, the second lady of the United States, and see what she has to say.
That's not a secret, is it? I think we all know.
Right. Master Gunnery Sergeant Chris Stowe, a Marine veteran I met in Tampa, who deployed for combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, said nothing had helped him deal with the trauma from his service in the Marines until he finally agreed to meet with the art therapist at Walter Reed Medical Center. Chris credits art therapy with saving his marriage and his life. And Chris went on to establish a glass-blowing workshop to help other vets. Many of our veteran heroes struggle as they transition back into civilian life, and sometimes the stress is too difficult to manage alone. A few weeks ago, I had the honor of speaking with some amazing Americans who answer the Veterans Crisis Line. One in particular, Sydney Morgan, especially impacted me. A veteran herself, Sydney said it is the highest honor of her life until they physically walk into a clinic to receive help they deserve, and she can pass their hand to someone ready to help. In these difficult times, we've all seen so many examples of everyday Americans reaching out a hand to those in need, those who, in humility, have considered others more important than themselves. We've seen healthcare workers, teachers, first responders, mental health providers, law enforcement officers, grocery and delivery workers, and farmers, and so many others, heroes all. 100 years ago, women secured the right to vote. So let's vote, America. Let's honor our heroes. Let's re-elect President Trump and Vice President Pence for 4 more years. God bless our heroes, and God bless the United States of America.
All right, Second Lady Karen Pence.
Behold these truths.
We are cutting to, oh, there, look, it's
Philadelphia.
your town there, Chris Stigall. Yeah, there it is, Philadelphia. There, you got to throw him a bone now and again. Coming up next is, by the way, it's going to be Kellyanne Conway will be next on the agenda, a woman I hope we soon will be referring to as George Conway's ex-wife. Here she is. Let's go to
100 years ago, courageous warriors helped women secure the right to vote. This has been a century worth celebrating, but also a reminder that our democracy is young and fragile. A woman in a leadership role can still seem novel. Not so for President Trump. For decades, he has elevated women to senior positions in business and in government. He confides in and consults us, respects our opinions, and insists that we are on equal footing with the men. President Trump helped me shatter a barrier in the world of politics by empowering me to manage his campaign to its successful conclusion. With the help of millions of Americans, our team defied the critics, the naysayers, the conventional wisdom, and we won. For many of us, women's empowerment is not a slogan. It comes not from strangers on social media or sanitized language in a corporate handbook. It comes from the everyday heroes who nurture us, who shape us, and who believe in us. I was raised in a household of all women. They were self-reliant and resilient. Their lives were not easy, but they never complained. Money was tight, but we had an abundance of what mattered most: family, faith, and freedom. I learned that in America, limited means does not make for limited dreams. The promise of America belongs to us all. This is a land of inventors and innovators, of entrepreneurs and educators, of pioneers and parents, each contributing to the success and the future of a great nation and her people. These everyday heroes have a champion in President Trump. The teacher who took extra time to help students adjust to months of virtual learning. The nurse who finished a 12-hour COVID shift and then took a brief break, only to change her mask, gown, and gloves to do it all over again. The small business owner striving to reopen after the lockdown was lifted, and then again after her store was vandalized and looted. The single mom with 2 kids, 2 jobs, 2 commutes, who 10 years after that empty promise finally has health insurance. President Trump and Vice President Pence have lifted Americans, provided them with dignity, opportunity, and results. I have seen firsthand many times the president comforting and encouraging a child who has lost a parent who has lost a child, a worker who lost his job, an adolescent who lost her way to drugs. Don't lose hope, he has told them, assuring them that they are not alone and that they matter. There always will be people who have far more than us. Our responsibility is to focus on those who have far less than us. President Trump has done precisely that in taking unprecedented action to combat this nation's drug crisis. He told me, "This is so important, Kellyanne. So many lives have been ruined by addiction and will never even know it because people are ashamed to reach out for help and they're not even sure who to turn to in their toughest hour." Rather than look the other way, President Trump stared directly at this drug crisis next door, and through landmark bipartisan legislation, has helped secure historic investments in surveillance, interdiction, education, prevention, treatment, and recovery. We have a long way to go, but the political inertia that costs lives and the silence and the stigma that prevents people in need from coming forward is melting away. This is the man I know and the president we need for 4 more years. He picks the toughest fights and tackles the most complex problems. He has stood by me, and he will stand up for you. In honor of the women who empowered me and for the future of the children we all cherish, thank you, and God bless you always.
Very nice remarks from Kellyanne Conway. Of course, as she has announced this week that she'll be leaving the Trump administration, and it's been a rough 4 years for her. High pressure. I would have loved, Chris, if she had had her husband standing behind her holding her coat. I think that would have been just the right image.
You know, I'm wondering, do you think CNN brought George in for one last round of commentary or rebuttal?
Oh God!
I'm surprised she even decided to give this.
I wouldn't doubt it. What a contemptible human being George Conway is. I really,
you know, Larry, you're a married man, and your wife has a high-profile position with someone that you don't particularly care for. Can you imagine in a million years conducting yourself the way George Conway has? I just can't imagine it as a man, as a married man.
I literally. And you know, we use this term, you know, I can't imagine it as a rhetorical device, but no. I literally cannot bring myself to envision doing that to my wife in any way whatsoever.
I would divorce her. I would divorce her privately first. Honestly, if I were that fundamentally opposed to what she was doing, I'd leave her quietly and privately first. But I would never demean my family, my wife, embarrass my children and myself the way George Conway has. It's disgraceful. I think,
you know, I
really do.
I'm looking at this right now. Not only do we have Sister Deidre Byrne, who is from the Little Sisters of the Poor, which is a group of nuns that Barack Obama and Joe Biden just couldn't stand existed without having to force them pay for abortions and birth control. And then we have Lou Holtz from the Fighting Irish. I wonder if this is sort of an appeal to Catholic voters going on here, because Joe Biden tried to wrap himself around his Catholic faith in such a shameless way. A man who's never seen an abortion he doesn't want to fund. Catholic vote, it can make a difference in a place like Pennsylvania, I would think, Chris Stigall.
Sure, a huge Catholic presence in Philadelphia alone, and southeastern Pennsylvania, where a woman was just cold cocked on I don't know if you saw the video. This was a real thing that happened at Sunday Mass at the most preeminent cathedral in Philadelphia on Sunday. It's so dystopian in Center City, Philadelphia. They're just accustomed to loons walking in off the parkway into this beautiful cathedral, muttering and doing God knows what. There's a homeless encampment there right now, like most major cities. Someone walks in off the streets during Mass, and the woman, the lector, is coming down off the altar after she's just read, and this woman just walks up out of the side shot and just pow, just belts this woman, who just kind of takes it and sits down. They find the woman, and she says, "Oh, well, I hope these people get the help they need. I forgive her. God forgives her." And they know who the woman is that did it. They didn't arrest her. They're not going to file charges. Because these people at this Catholic cathedral in Philadelphia are just accustomed to madness and mayhem. They literally are accustomed to people wandering into their mass, muttering and babbling and causing chaos and mayhem. So I don't know why I went off on that.
Well,
places Catholics. By the way, I'd love it if this woman showed up with some car parts that she said she just pulled out of Biden's motorcade. Wouldn't that be kind of, a la, how do you solve a problem like?
Let's check with Sister Byrne here. By the way, Sister Byrne also a retired colonel from the Army. So let's see what she has to say.
He has a nationwide of religious standing behind him. You'll find us here with our weapon of choice, the rosary. So thank you, Mr. President. We are all praying for you.
And this shock absorber. All right, I'm sorry I didn't allow her to get a little bit more going on there. But that's cool.
Many of you might
with this weapon of choice.
Or maybe that football guy. It is a pleasure, a blessing, and an honor for me to explain why I believe that President Trump is a consistent winner, an outstanding leader, and deserves to be reelected as our president. First, I want you to know that I grew up in a one-bedroom house in West Virginia. I may have been poor, but the lessons my parents taught me were priceless. They taught me that life is about making choices. Wherever you are, good or bad,
I hate to do this to
anyone else.
Lou Holtz.
Go get an education. Get to work.
All right. I'll be honest with you. I grew up in Michigan. I'm a Wolverine fan. I'm the one Catholic in America who hates Notre Dame. And now I root for Navy football, and Notre Dame backed out of the. So good for you, Lou Holtz. It's wonderful. He likes Donald Trump. I don't know. Let's move on. Chris, just teasing. I want to get as much analysis in here as I can before we get to the big names. And by the way, I actually want to talk with you because our next speaker, because they're moving along at a very fast clip, is the president of the National Association of Police Organizations. I don't think it is easy to overestimate how important the endorsement of police unions and police organizations for Donald Trump is here. That used to be a solid, reliable endorsement for Democrats like Joe Biden.
There can't be a single cop in the country or member of a cop's family, immediate family anyway. There can't be any kid or spouse who lives under the roof with a cop who's not voting for Donald Trump this fall. There can't be one. It would be negligent. It would be suicide. It would be the assurance that your loved one will get killed. I can't imagine if you're an officer of the law in any city, anywhere in the country, whatever law enforcement role you serve, if you or your immediate family who live under the same roof aren't voting for Donald Trump, if you're of legal voting age, I can't imagine what the hell's wrong with you. I can't.
Yeah. And by the way, Democrats aren't stupid. Joe Biden isn't stupid when he's awake. They know that's a soft spot for them. They know it's a vulnerable thing. You think they would have found a cop to speak at the DNC. They didn't. I don't think they could. Not one of prominence.
No.
Right?
And in fact, last night when you and I wrapped, I go in the house, I sit down and I watch the rest of the evening's proceedings. They put on, last night here on the RNC, they put on a cop, a God-fearing cop who invokes his Christian faith, who identified a pregnant heroin addict, who said, let's make sure we keep that baby safe, get you some treatment. Oh, and my wife and I prayed about it. We'll adopt your baby rather than abort it. I thought, pick any of those elements. It's like a leftist Mad Lib hell. Cop, abortion, woman, heroin addict, adoption. Oh my gosh. You'd never see any of that at the DNC.
No. And the very real fact is the Democrats and the people who are supporting the power base of the Democratic Party would defund that man's operation, would create a condition where that police officer could very well be out of work because they are defunding because the police are identified as the problem. It's not only are the messages at the RNC strong right now, but it's very important to continue to hearken back and contrast this message with what we heard and didn't hear last week.
I've heard some rumblings. I don't know how true or substantial they are. That New York is a real issue, a real interesting soft spot for Democrats. And I say soft spot in that if it's close, can you imagine if it's within single digits? Could you imagine what that would mean? What would that message be? I'm not saying Trump's going to win New York. I don't think they think he's going to win New York.
Right.
That would be really remarkable if it's even sort of close. And we know that New York cops endorse Trump. So I don't know. This has all the makings of something that would not be surprising as a landslide victory for Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
I'm not predicting it, but it sure feels like
Please.
it has the makings of it.
Stop. Get behind me, Satan. Stop it.
I know. I shouldn't say things like that.
270. 270. That's all we need is 270, and that's all I'm aiming for is 270. And there are many ways to get there. Chris, before we have to let you go, Ed Morrissey of HotAir is going to be joining us. I'm very happy he's actually left his vacation for this. Do we want to hear from the police officer? I think that this is important.
Please,
you want to do that?
Yeah.
Let's check in on this man. He runs the Police Officers Organizations of America.
I'm also the president of the National Association of Police Organizations, NAPO. Our organization recently endorsed Donald Trump for re-election as President of the United States. Our endorsement recognized his strong support for the men and women on the front lines, particularly during these challenging times. We value his support of aggressive federal prosecution of those who attack our police officers. His signing of the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act, and his support for permanently authorizing funds to support 9/11 first responders and their families. Law enforcement officers across the nation take an oath to run towards danger when everyone else is running away. They do so willingly to protect our families and communities. I'm proud that the overwhelming majority of American police officers are the best of the best and put their lives on the line without hesitation. And good officers need to know their elected leaders and the department brass have their backs. Unfortunately, chaos results when failed officials in cities like Portland, Minneapolis, Chicago, and New York make the conscious decision not to support law enforcement. Shootings, murders, looting, and rioting occur unabated. The violence and bloodshed we are seeing in these and other cities isn't happening by chance. It's the direct result of refusing to allow law enforcement to protect our communities. Joe Biden has turned his candidacy over to the far left anti-law enforcement radicals. And as a senator, Kamala Harris pushed to further restrict police, cut their training, and make our American communities and streets even more dangerous than they already are. Conversely, President Trump supports the creation of a national standard for training on de-escalation and communication to give officers more tools to resolve conflict without violence. The differences between Trump, Pence, and Biden-Harris are crystal clear. Your choices are the most pro-law enforcement president we've ever had, or the most radical anti-police ticket in history. We invite those who value the safety of their family and loved ones to join the hundreds of thousands of members of the National Association of Police Organizations and support the re-election of President Donald J. Trump. Thank you, and God bless America.
All right, that was Michael McHale, president of the National Association of Police Organizations. Chris Stigall, some final words here as you head out. We will see you tomorrow for our final night. But what do you expect to hear tomorrow morning at AM 990, The Answer in Philly, from your listeners?
Well,
oh, did we get a freeze? Oh, shoot. Oh, well, that's bad timing. But the good news is we were finishing with Chris anyway, and joining us now is Ed Morrissey, the Grand Poobah over at HotAir.com. That's his title, by the way. He wears a fez around the office and a sash. Ed, so good to see you. Thank you. You're on vacation this week. Your byline is missed, of course, but I appreciate you joining us for our live stream at Townhall here.
Larry, it's great to be with you. And I went from Grand Poobah to Grand Slacker the last week and a half. So yeah, I'll be back on Monday. But I couldn't resist dipping out of my vacation to do this with you. I can't think of anything more fun to do on vacation than to do running commentary on the Republican National Convention. This is a blast.
Well, and just so you know, we sort of dip in and out of the speeches here and there, depending on who's delivering it. This is Representative Elise Stefanik of New York, who really made a name for herself in the Intelligence Committee, questioning James Comey and getting to the bottom of the Obamagate controversy. But Ed, knowing how strong you are in your analysis and coverage of faith, and specifically the Catholic Church, I'd love your reaction to that imagery of a sister, a nun in full habit, speaking at a political convention on behalf of a Republican. I mean, if anything, Catholics have always been identified with the Democrats ever since Kennedy. That was a striking image.
You know, it's interesting because we've had some debates about the Catholic vote, right? And the Catholic vote's really kind of disintegrated. It used to be a working class vote, sort of an urban suburban mix, and it used to have a definite character to it. Now Catholics mostly just vote along the same lines as the general populace, so there's not really a definable Catholic vote. But yeah, I think the imagery of having a nun, and by the way, was a doctor and a colonel, according to Hugh Hewitt. I didn't know this.
A retired Army colonel, yeah.
A retired Army colonel, yes. Saying that this is the weapon of our choice, you know, holding up the Catholic rosary, of which I own several, by the way. And as Larry knows.
You have an arsenal. You have an arsenal, right?
I do.
You keep them in a gun safe, yeah.
You know, yeah, actually, I think I've actually been asked, you know, well, how many rosaries are enough for you, man? You should own more guns, but not back off on the rosaries.
Right, exactly. And keep your hands off that assault rosary. And then we don't want any assault rosaries around.
It's the one with the bayonet and the little pistol grip. I love my pistol grip rosary. It was very interesting, and it was striking, I think. And it clearly, if you read some of this stuff last week, you know, because I was on vacation, but I was trying to keep up a little bit. There was apparently some internal Republican polling saying that there had been that the white Catholic vote had gone soft on Donald Trump. And I think that this was an opportunity to try to call them back and remind them why it's important for Catholics to support the most pro-life president since Ronald Reagan, at the very least, I think. And and effectively, maybe even more so because of all the judges he's been appointing. But I think it was
and winning fighting the fight and winning the fight for the Little Sisters of the Poor, in order that Joe Biden and Barack Obama just are hell bent on making pay for abortions and birth control. That's all part of that narrative as well.
And Joe Biden explicitly said he was going to continue the fight against the Little Sisters of the Poor, which just boggles the mind.
Let's check in here. Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina, Republican nominee. Let's hear this.
At 18 years old, I was in a horrific car accident that's left me paralyzed from the waist down. Instantly, my hopes and dreams were seemingly destroyed. I was given a 1% chance of surviving. But thanks to the power of prayer, a very loving community, and many skilled doctors, I made it. It took me over a year to recover. My first public outing in a wheelchair was to a professional baseball game. You know, before my accident, I was 6'3". I stood out in the crowd. But as I wheeled through the stadium, I felt invisible. At 20, I thought about giving up. However, I knew I could still make a difference. You know, my accident has given me new eyes to see and new ears to hear. God protected my mind and my ability to speak. So I say to people who feel forgotten, ignored and invisible. I see you. I hear you. At 20, I made a choice. In 2020, our country has a choice. We can give up on the American idea, or we can work together to make our imperfect union more perfect. I choose to fight for the future, to seize the high ground and retake the shining city on a hill. While the radical left wants to dismantle, defund, and destroy, Republicans, under President Trump's leadership, want to rebuild, restore, and renew. I just turned 25. When I'm elected this November, I'll be the youngest member of Congress in over 200 years. And if you don't think young people can change the world, then you just don't know American history. George Washington was 21 when he received his first military commission. Abe Lincoln, 22 when he first ran for office. And my personal favorite, James Madison, was just 25 years old when he signed the Declaration of Independence. In times of peril, young people have stepped up and saved this country, abroad and at home. We held the line, scaled the cliffs, crossed oceans, liberated camps, and cracked codes. Yet today, political forces want to usher in the digital dark ages, a time of information without wisdom and tribalism without truth. National leaders on the left have normalized emotion-based voting and a radicalized identity politics that rejects Martin Luther King's dream. MLK's dream is our dream, for all Americans to be judged solely on their character. Millions of people risk their lives every year to come here because they believe in the dream of MLK and the American dream. Join us as we, the Party of Freedom, double down on ensuring the American dream for all people. We are committed to building a new town square. It welcomes all ideas and all people. Here we will have freedom of speech, not freedom from speech. To liberals, I say let's have a conversation. Be a true liberal. Listen to other ideas and let the best ones prevail. And to conservatives, I say let's define what we support and win the argument in areas like healthcare and on the environment. In this new town square, you don't have to apologize for your beliefs or cower to a mob. You can kneel before God, but stand for our flag. The American idea my ancestors fought for during the Revolutionary War is just as exciting and revolutionary today as it was 250 years ago. I say to Americans who love our country, young and old, be a radical for freedom. Be a radical for liberty. And be a radical for our republic, for which I stand. One nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and may God bless America.
Wow. That was the most effective speech of the night.
I'll say, yeah, 25 years old.
Kayleigh McEnany, probably number 2.
Yeah. I have a special place in my heart for Madison Cawthorn. I actually friends with a family that is very close with him. You know, before he had that horrible car accident at 18, where he was paralyzed, he actually had received a commission to the Naval Academy by Mark Meadows, by Congressman Mark Meadows, the congressman who he is now looking to replace there in the House of Representatives. Of course, as you know, my daughter goes to Naval Academy, so I see in him so many of the midshipmen that I see on a regular basis. I hate to be CNN here, but I fact check. I don't think James Madison actually signed the Declaration of Independence.
He did the Constitution. And I would also fact check on the George Washington, not necessarily fact check, but yes, George Washington got his first military command at a very young age. It didn't end well. It sort of resulted in the French-Indian War.
Yeah, it was a bit of a slaughter, in fact. So I don't know if I would use that as an example.
He screwed up. He screwed up pretty big time, actually. In that, that's the reason why I was laughing when he said that. I was like, well, technically that's right, but I don't know that I would actually use that as a great example.
Ixnay on the Washington way, but that's all.
The Jonah Hill meme.
Yeah, exactly.
But honestly, when that ended, I wanted to say, and that was future President Madison Cawthorn speaking. One impressive
incredibly effective. It really was. And, and so much of this, I've been saying it all week, but I'll just repeat it. I always feel like Republicans win on ideas. I believe in our ideas, and I think that we have but we are always terrible at communicating those ideas. Something's happening in this convention, Ed, where they are just cutting through the crap and really getting the message out in a really effective way and in an effectively visual way.
So two things. First off, all of the speeches have suffered, with the exception of Cawthorn's and Kayleigh McEnany's, because they were personal. They've really suffered from the Soto response speech factor, which is that all of this is being done without an audience, without a live audience, right? So, for instance, and I'm not knocking anybody because it is what it is, right? But you had Marsha Blackburn's speech, which was a good speech, but it was peppered with, reaction lines, and there's no reaction because there's nobody there. So it all tends to
hold for applause. Yeah.
Exactly. It's that joke about Hillary Clinton saying "hold for applause." It was kind of like that, and most of these speeches, they kind of suffer from that quality. Now, Kayleigh McEnany, and I'm sure they're working from prepared speeches, but they managed to deliver it in a way that there wasn't one-liners, there weren't reaction lines to those things, and so it was more speaking from the heart. And I think that right now, Jack Brewer, we're not catching this, but I imagine Jack Brewer's he's not a politician, so he's probably delivering a speech along those same lines, personal, not zinger laden, and so those are going to be more effective in this.
I'll tell you but hold that thought, because let's listen a little bit to Jack Brewer, especially on a night where the Milwaukee Bucks and NBA teams have decided to cancel their games for political reasons. Let's hear what Jack Brewer has to say about it.
And Donald Trump. Our president has made incredible strides to end mass incarceration and give unprecedented opportunities for Black in America to rise. America, let this election be a call for all God's people who are called by his name to humble ourselves and pray together and to seek his face and to turn from our wicked ways. Then he will hear us from heaven, and he will forgive our sins, and he will heal our land. Amen, and God bless America.
Go ahead and finish your thought, Ed. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something amazing.
Well, that was sort of like the and I can't remember her name, but the nun who was speaking, is that, again, not a politician's speech. The politician speeches tend to be more, zinger oriented, that sort of thing. And so to me, I think that those are the things that are going to resonate. My second thought was actually sort of escapes me now. It'll come back to me in a minute, but it had to do with the format. Now, it's okay. I didn't see much of last week's convention, but I think the difference between the two is that from the reports that I saw, the Democrats were really pushing the idea that there's a crisis that can only be solved by electing Democrats, and it was all about the crisis. Donald Trump is the crisis. COVID is the crisis. The economic meltdown is the crisis, even though they want to keep shutting things down, which will make the crisis worse.
Right.
Right. But it wasn't really about policy. It was really about, the world is on fire, and the only thing we can do is elect somebody who will, not, throw gasoline on the flames. Okay, that's an argument.
Yeah.
But, in this instance, though, what you have, and I think the Republicans are doing this deliberately, is they're very clearly focusing on policy. Not every speech, of course. I think that like Kayleigh McEnany's speech really was focusing on her personal story, and that's always a staple of conventions.
Sure.
And Cawthorn's too, for that man. Madison Cawthorn's was about his personal struggle and how he sees it relating to making America better, and that's great too. But it's really more focused on policy, and I think when you're in this type of event, where you don't need to throw red meat out to an audience so you can get reaction lines, there's more room for policy in speeches like this. The question is, are people really going to pay attention to policy? Because as you know, Larry, policy tends to act like, a soporific in these sorts of situations. I'm curious as to how well this is going to be received. The ratings, though, so far have been really good for the Republican Party. TV ratings.
They have, and let's see. I think actually it's coming across serious and presented in such a way that it's engaging. I'm a homer. I'm rooting for the home team here, so I am biased. I don't mind saying it. But there's a lot of important symbolism that we're seeing too. In fact, one aspect of the symbolism that I'd love for you to react to, a big Minnesota presence in this convention. We had a mayor of a Minnesota city. We had a logger from Minnesota earlier this evening. I'm trying to remember. I think we had another representative out of the land of 1,000 lakes. They keep saying it over at the Trump campaign, but Ed, you're in Minnesota. Is Minnesota in play?
I've seen polling from Trafalgar and Emerson. Trafalgar's a Republican outfit, right? But they are, they do a pretty good job in reflecting reality. Emerson is an independent. It's a college that does polling. Both of them show it as a virtual tie in Minnesota. And I think that you're looking at here two different factors. One, and they're related to each other. One is I think the riots really have shaken people here in Minnesota. Especially in the suburbs. I live in the suburbs of the Twin Cities, and people are very worried about just how far these things are going to go. In fact, they had to deploy more sheriff's deputies in Minneapolis tonight. I'm not sure why, but I saw a flash on that. They had to bring in sheriff's deputies into Minneapolis, where they don't normally patrol. And so things are still going on out there, and I think it's really got people rattled. And this is part of that law and order stability argument that Donald Trump wants to make. The other thing too is, don't forget that these same areas that are destabilizing are the areas where Democrats have the greatest strength. And to the extent that this is going to interfere with people turning out to vote, it really could be a disaster for Minnesota Democrats here, and it really could boost Donald Trump's chances. That's something that I think people haven't talked about enough. They've burned out blocks of buildings there. You've got the city that's sort of preventing using all sorts of different red tape to slow down the rebuilding process there. People are going to vote with their feet. They're not going to be around. And if they're not around, they may not bother to vote, which is going to be a really interesting dynamic when it rolls around in November. If it continues. And
that certainly, that will also affect down ticket as well, of course. And let's just in terms of the basic math of becoming the president of the United States and winning the election, if Donald Trump wins all his states he won last time, but he loses those big three, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, if he picks up Minnesota, he gets to 270. He could lose Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but if he can flip Minnesota, he gets to 270. Let's check in with Congressman Lee Zeldin. He was supposed to speak earlier this evening. Maybe there was a video problem. Since he is on video, let's hear what he has to say out of New York.
To make our country greater than ever before, we must re-elect President Trump. We are the land of the free because of the brave. And we are the land of opportunity because we have a president who wants to empower the best of who we are to be the best of what we can be. There's never been a nation greater than ours, never a people more resilient than ours, and never a future for America more promising than ours right now. Keeping America great is up to us, and losing is not an option.
Ed, it's again contrasting with the Democrats. There's a lot of America is a great place, and we stand for great things, and we have a great history. Didn't hear that a lot from. We heard quite the opposite last week from the Democrats, actually.
Yeah, and I think this goes really this goes to a question I think that we're going to be asking ourselves as the driving question in this election. Do you think that America is a good place? Now, fundamentally, is it a good place? If you say yes to that, you're probably going to vote for Donald Trump. If you say no to that, you're probably going to vote for Joe Biden. And I think both parties have basically shoved their chips all in on that particular question. And both conventions reflect this. I mean, right now there's a ad going on right now, a canned video presentation, which is also a staple of normal conventions too.
Yes.
Showing, what a great place America is. Donald Trump thinks America is a great place. Make America great again is
honoring the veterans,
honoring the veterans and stuff like that. Democrats did a little bit of that stuff, but mostly, again, it was about the crisis. We're racist. Our economics are unfair and people are oppressed and America is not great. America is terrible. We need to fix America. So I think it comes down to that. I think that's a fundamental bet that both parties are making here. If you think America's a great place, doesn't mean it's a perfect place, but if you think America's a great place, you're probably going to vote for Donald Trump. If you think that America's not a great place, you're going to vote for Joe Biden.
By the way, that video was also about. That video was also an ad or a message about reforms at the Veterans Administration, which also falls into the President Trump's promises made, promises kept message. Here's Senator Joni Ernst standing in front of that famous tractor where she announced her original campaign for Senate. Let's see that she is definitely on people's radars for 2024. Here's Senator Ernst.
Iowa in 2008 when I was in the National Guard. We saw historic floods that swept through the communities. We lent a helping hand to our fellow Iowans who were literally underwater. We thought we had seen the worst, but 12 years later, these same communities have faced an even more devastating disaster, the recent derecho storm. If you don't live in Iowa, you may not have heard much about it at first. While reporters here in the state were in the trenches covering the equivalent of a Category 2 hurricane, most of the national media looked the other way. To them, Iowa is still just flyover country. Houses, farms were destroyed. About 1/3 of our crops here were damaged. In some cases, these storms wiped out a lifetime of work. And yet Iowa farmers didn't hesitate to grab their chainsaws and check on their neighbors. Our farmers live every day with that sense of service, the stewards of the land, the ones who feed and fuel the world. President Trump quickly signed an emergency declaration for Iowa to provide relief. And of course, when President Trump came to Cedar Rapids, the national media finally did too. For years, I've worked closely with the president for farmers in Iowa and across the country. We scrapped Obama and Biden's punishing waters of the United States rule, which would have regulated about 97% of land in Iowa, in some cases, even puddles. It would have been a nightmare for farmers. The president delivered on major trade deals with Japan and the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. And he implemented the sale of E15 fuel year-round. That means more choices for you at the pump and more jobs for farmers in the heartland. This is something the Obama-Biden administration failed to do in 8 years. In fact, I can't recall an administration more hostile to farmers than Obama-Biden.
Senator Ernst is a great communicator. She is. Let's dip down here a little bit. Cynics in the media ad will say, "Oh, who cares? Farming states are probably going to go for Trump anyway. Iowa's going to go for Trump." Let's not forget, 2008 and 2012, Iowa went for Barack Obama in the presidential election. So it's not a slam dunk. Yeah.
No, Iowa's always tricky, always tricky. And they had just elected a Democratic governor back then too. I mean, Vilsack was around for I think 2 terms or part of 2 terms before Obama got elected.
Sure.
It is not a slam dunk in Iowa for Republicans. It's actually technically really not a slam dunk in places like Kansas either. But so I would say that you're looking here at shoring up the strongholds. That's what Ernst is doing here. She's shoring up the strongholds. She's saying, "Hey, look, we've got corn. We're sticking corn in gas tanks. Don't forget, we're selling corn." That sells. I'm not sure if Larry's disappeared. I see he's gone off my screen. Larry, are you there? I think Larry is. I think Larry's out or having trouble. So Burgess Owens is speaking right now. Let's take a listen to Burgess Owens. We'll see if we can't get Larry back on.
Silas escaped through the Underground Railroad and settled in the great state of Texas. He went on to become a successful entrepreneur. He built his community's first church, first elementary school, and purchased 102 acres of farmland, which he paid off in 2 years. I'm here today, a candidate for Congress, because of my great-great-grandfather, Silas Burgess. I was raised in the South during the days of Jim Crow and the KKK. Even through the challenges of segregation, we were taught that anything is possible in America. When I was 22 years old, I thought all my dreams had come true when I was drafted by the New York Jets. 10 years later, with a Pro Bowl nod and a Super Bowl championship under my belt, I left the NFL to start a business. I thought I could never fail, but years later I did, and I lost everything. As I moved my family of 6 into a one-bedroom basement apartment in Brooklyn, New York, I had a choice to make: to feel sorry for myself or get to work. I worked as a chimney sweep during the day and a security guard at night. It was humbling to be recognized cleaning a chimney by someone who once cheered me as an NFL fan. But those hard days would pay off.
Let's bring this back down. Let's bring Larry back on here. Burgess Owens. That's great. Give us a chance to take a listen to Burgess Owens. Burgess Owens has been making the rounds in conservative circles now for the last couple of years, and he's running for the House this year. Burgess Owens, of course, he thought all his. I almost wanted to laugh. He said, "I thought all my dreams came true when I was drafted by the New York Jets." Now, this is a different era when the Jets were actually running a football team.
What a dream!
I know a couple Jets fans who would strenuously object to the idea that was that was a realization of all your dreams. But he's an impressive guy. He's spoken at CPAC, I think 2 or 3 times now, and I actually didn't realize that he was, until earlier this year, that he was pursuing a political office. I thought he was just more in terms of activism. He's impressive on the stump. This is the second NFL veteran that we've had here in the last few minutes. There's another speaker that's going to be coming up. I got some embargoed remarks. Clarence Henderson, who's going to speak about the civil rights, the civil rights movement and how the promises have been fulfilled and how to move forward from that. They're definitely trying to make a big pitch for black voters at least today in this convention.
They are, and by the way, NFL great Herschel Walker spoke on the first night and was incredibly effective as well. Clarence Henderson, by the way, he will be third to the last. The final 3 speakers is Clarence Henderson. Then, get this, I'm just getting the order of speeches. Richard Grinnell, former acting director of national intelligence, Rick Grinnell, will be the second to last voice in the Mike Pompeo slot from last night before Vice President Mike Pence. That says something about their how they feel about Rick Grinnell. Well, one other thing about Burgess Owens that you should know, he's running for the Mia Love seat in Utah, and I'm sure you know, which is one of those. It's one of those purple seats. It goes Democratic. People think Utah is all Republican, not this area of Salt Lake City, and he has a real chance of winning. And this is why that's important. The Republicans will not take the majority in the House and have no chance of getting the majority in the House unless they win seats like that. And he has a real chance of winning that seat.
Well, this is, I think, the big question coming into this election, apart from the presidential question, but it's connected to it, which is, will Republicans be able to regain the ground that they lost in the suburbs in the midterms? And part of this has to do with the turnout, with the get out the vote machine. And it has to do with what are the concerns of the suburbs right now. I think the concern in the suburbs is economy. COVID, of course, COVID's concern everywhere, but the economy and law and order, peaceful, being able to be out in public in peace. They're seeing what's going on in the cities nearby, and I think that they are becoming very concerned that it's going to overshadow the suburbs too. And I think that this is an opportunity. It's the reason why they're pressing so hard on this. It's an opportunity for the Republicans to really make a pitch about allowing the suburbs to remain autonomous and separate from the cities that they surround, because the Democrats want to put back in the HUD policy that would essentially allow, and in fact, we're coming up, I think, to the big four, because Lara Trump is, I think, fourth to last.
Is that right? Well, let's see. We've got Lara Trump, Sam Vigil, who is a New Mexico man whose wife was shot and killed tragically, then Clarence Anderson, then Rick Grinnell, and then Mike Pence.
Yep, then Mike Pence
accepts
the nomination.
Yeah, I think you were saying about the law and order issue, and about where Republicans can regain the House if possible if they come back into those suburban districts. And you're absolutely right. It is very important.
And I think the get out the vote thing is going to be very important too. I mean, Politico did a pretty good job of reporting on this. It was a couple of weeks ago, because I was actually still working rather than gold bricking at the time. And they were reporting that the Trump campaign, the RNC/Trump combined campaign, were doing 1 million door knocks. I think it was either a week or a month, but it was in a specific time frame. They're doing 1 million door knocks either a week or a month. And the combined Biden DNC campaign are doing 0 door knocks. They're not doing door knocking.
Yeah.
And that has down ballot implications too. Now, some of those down ballot candidates are certainly doing their own door knocking. But if the DNC isn't behind that, if they're not providing the support for that, it's going to be very haphazard. The messages are going to be mixed. It's going to be very confused. And this is the type of thing that the RNC rebuilt within the RNC's house under Reince Priebus. I wrote about this in my book. And you and I talked about the book. We're kind enough to have
I remember. Yes.
It's important to do this retail politicking, even in the time of COVID. That type of stuff is really important. And and we found that out not just in 2012, but in 2016, because Hillary Clinton wasn't doing it. Mitt Romney didn't do it in 2012. They didn't do that type of retail politicking, getting out, talking to people, building ground, support from grassroots, from the ground up rather than from the top down. And Biden is running a top down campaign again.
One other thing I want to mention, earlier I had said erroneously that Mike Pence would be delivering his speech from the Antietam battlefield, because I had read that it was a Civil War battlefield. Someone in the media got it completely wrong. It will be in Maryland. It's going to be Fort McHenry. It is in Maryland, but that is not a Civil War battlefield. That's a fort from the War of 1812. But of course, any school child knows that's where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. I wonder, Ed Morrissey, if you think the vice president's location and the content of his speech might talk a little bit about the protests against the flag that are so ubiquitous that we are seeing even tonight with the NBA shutting down. It is a cultural issue, but it is an issue that matters, and I think it's an issue that works for Republicans.
Yeah, I certainly think that it's no coincidence. I think they're going to talk about the national anthem. I think they're going to talk about, what it is that it means and what the context of it is. And bear in mind, they're getting the last word on this, right? The Democrats had all sorts of time last week to make their cultural arguments. This time it's the Republicans' turn to do this. I think that, again, this is sort of going right back to the bet that both parties are making, right? Do you think America's in a good place? If you say yes, then you probably don't care, or you probably either don't, the national anthem probably doesn't bother you, or you like it, right? If you say no to that, the national anthem probably at least annoys you, if not outright enrages you. So I think this is one of those cultural, culture war things that both parties are going in on, and it all relates to that bottom line bet. Is America a good place? If you say yes, you're voting for Donald Trump. If you say no, you're voting for Joe Biden.
Ed Morrissey, you gave us great, obviously, as always, political insight and then firsthand insight into some of the themes tonight, including the Catholic vote and what's going on in Minnesota there, as there's an obvious play here from the stage for Minnesota. I'd love for you to sort of give us your final thoughts here before we bring in Kurt Schlichter to just sort of negate all of the class and style you brought to the table.
I was gonna say, my first piece of advice for everybody watching this: when Kurt comes on the air, that's when you put on your Kevlar underwear.
Kurt's been great. Now, so you are used to the Kurt Schlichter on our VIP Gold chats, which is behind our paywall and very exclusive, and it's uncensored. But here for the Kurt is very disciplined. He's on his best behavior, and he's been giving us some great stuff here every night. So we'll be fine.
Kurt's a hell of a radio host too. He fills in for Hugh Hewitt, does a hell of a job. And and I'm being told now that the reason why the sheriff's deputies are out in Minneapolis is there's looting going on at Nicollet Mall Target in downtown Minneapolis. Nicollet Mall is an upscale mall. I mean, part of it is, at least. It's a walking mall, and that's where you have some nicer shops, some more pedestrian type shops. I don't know why they're looting tonight. Maybe it's the shooting in Kenosha that's touching this off, but clearly it's not over in Minneapolis. And again, I think clearly this is going to rattle people out here and make them very concerned about what it is that they're voting for, especially out in the suburbs. All right, so final thoughts. I think that the more that people focus, the Republicans. Sorry about that. I think that the more that people are focused on the law and order issues here, I think the more that this is going to resonate. In 2018, the issue for the suburbs was health care. Republicans blew it by talking about immigration. It was all immigration, where the issue in the suburbs was really health care. And Republicans didn't have a health care plan. They had just botched the repeal of Obamacare because they didn't have a real plan for it. This time around, though, I think it's law and order, and I think Democrats are botching it by not speaking to the riots that are going on here. And the more that Republicans can focus on law and order, peaceful assembly, and the need to support police in order to establish public peace in the streets, I think the sharp and sudden increase in violent crime has got people really rattled, and that message is going to resonate in the suburbs. So the more they focus on that, the better off they're going to be. And I think the more that the Democrats are going to find themselves with their pants around their ankles.
Well, and the most amazing thing for us to observe in the next 69 days, Ed, is I think you're right. The Democrats need to do that. The question is, can they, without alienating such an important part of their passionate fundraising base led by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar? And I mean, they are trapped. And it'll be interesting to see how they try to get out of that trap. In the meantime, one thing is for certain, we will be reading HotAir.com all day long, multiple times a day, as it's always updated by the great Ed Morrissey when he's not on vacation. Go back to vacation. I don't need any trouble with your wife. She's already mad at me for Hawaii. So go ahead. Wait a minute. I need to explain that. That's going to sound like a Falwell thing. No. We were in Hawaii together on a conference, and Ed's wife took ill, and I occupied Ed's time. Oh, it's
no. She was very grateful for that, as was I. You and your lovely wife kept me company while my wife was in the hospital. And it's not a Falwell thing at all. But it was still kind of Falwell-esque there through half of that explanation, Larry. So I feel like we needed to do a full explanation there. By the way, great being with you. Thanks for allowing me to come on. And coming up now is the ever smooth, ever incisive Kurt Schlichter, Townhall.com columnist. Thanks so much.
New message is received.
Thank you, Ed. Let's bring in Kurt Schlichter, the velvet voice and mannerisms of Kurt Schlichter. Hey, Kurt, welcome in from California.
So let's review. I come in while Larry O'Connor and Ed Morrissey are discussing Jerry Falwell Jr.
Yeah.
And I'm not even here.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Oh,
We don't need
my
you.
gosh. By the way, those messages that he was getting were from me. So
I figured as much. I figured as much. All right. Let us, as we're having all this fun, we're hearing the tragic story of Sam Vigil. Let's dip in there and Ed, Kurt, check your microphone because it sounds like you're coming in on a weird Dan Rather frequency. And let's hear from Mr. Vigil.
Here we are.
Killer was arrested in Texas on unrelated charges. He is an illegal immigrant with a long criminal record. He had been deported in September and had come back in October to terrorize our community. I am extremely grateful to President Trump and the FBI for their efforts to deliver justice for Jackie and all the other innocent victims of violent crime. I am honored to support the president because he is supporting us. I know he will never stop fighting for justice, for law and order, for peace, security in our communities.
Yeah, I was waiting for when sanctuary policies were going to be brought up, and that was the first big one. We have 3 more speakers here, 2 live and this one videotape regarding civil rights. I want to take this time to talk to you, Kurt, because we have 2 speakers left. Of course, Vice President Pence will be the final speaker, but right before the lead-in to the vice president will be our friend Rick Grinnell, former acting director of national intelligence. What does that tell you about how the Trump administration and the party, how they view Rick Grinnell, his importance, and value his voice here? That's huge.
Well, it is enormous. Look, I am the first guy to tell you the party sucks. I'm from California. You just assume that. But first they pull off the RNC for 3 days, right? And every day is great. I'm sitting here, I'm watching this Cawthorn kid, and I'm just knocked out. I'm knocked out by Burgess Owens, Mr. Lewis. I mean, I'm just, wow, this stuff is great. And Rick Grinnell, and the fact that they identified Rick Grinnell as a guy with a future, that's huge, because what we're seeing here, Larry, is the bench in 24, 28, and 32.
Right.
This is the bench.
That's right.
It's going to come from this.
It's a pretty, and it's a pretty good-looking bench.
It's a great-looking bench. I'm knocked out by it, and I don't want to be the cheerleader. You know me. I'd rather throw monkey dung. But you know, you got to call it like you see it. And they have just done a fantastic job. I'm not bored. I'm interested. I'm occasionally moved. How about that nun, man?
That's a good nun.
The colonel. That was
a nun.
That colonel. I mean, her chain of command outranks mine. That's for sure.
Kurt, when you reflected last night on what we saw, and you sort of got to have the final word after that evening, when you woke up this morning, what stuck with you with regard to the speeches last night? Because for me, I kept going back to Abby Johnson, that compelling argument about abortion, which we had not heard from any Republican convention up until now, even though we're the party of choice. What about you? What sort of resonates?
Well, a couple things. Abby Johnson, definitely, because conservatives are not ashamed to be conservative anymore, and yet to be open and inviting. And see, that's the thing. We were supposed to be these John Lithgows and Footloose who were angry because people were dancing and wearing short skirts, like it was a party composed entirely of Matt Walsh. But you know, we're not ashamed that we're standing up for life. We're not ashamed we're standing up for guns. We're not ashamed that we're standing up for free speech and freedom of religion. At the same time, you've seen this collection of Republicans like you've never seen before, showing that we invite anybody in who wants to share the promise of the American dream. And God, I'm in cliches now, but you know, they're right. I mean, they work. That's it. You know, we're hearing about opportunity, we're hearing about service, we're hearing about heroism, and it's so easy to make those things into tiresome rote hack cliches. And yet we're
Yeah.
seeing these people living them and making compelling arguments. And I think it has resonated. And you can tell because this morning we woke up and had crapped their pants. Coming up,
Kurt,
we gotta stop. They saw the polling, Larry.
Yeah. Oh no, I know the polling was phenomenal. He's already getting a bounce, Kurt. It's amazing. Let me ask you this, because the other part of this has to do because the Republicans got to go second. Everything is a contrast. Oh, hold on. Here's Rick Grinnell. Let's go to Richard Grinnell.
During the presidential primary debates 4 years ago, one outsider stood alone and said in public what most Americans thought in private. It was 14 years after the start of the war in Afghanistan and 12 years after the invasion of Iraq, where thousands of American troops had died and trillions in taxpayer dollars had been spent. And yet no candidate could bring themselves to admit that something had gone badly wrong with American foreign policy. That the American voter, the American soldier, and the American taxpayer had all been let down. Except for one, Donald Trump. He called America's endless wars what they were, a disaster. The media was shocked because Donald Trump was running as a Republican. And yet he said out loud what we all knew, that American foreign policy was failing to make Americans safer. After the end of the Cold War, Democrats and Republicans in Washington bought into the illusion that the whole world would start to resemble America. And so they started to pursue unlimited globalization. They welcomed China into the World Trade Organization. They engaged in nation building in Afghanistan and tried to export democracy to Iraq. They signed a nuclear deal with Iran and a global climate agreement in Paris. But they didn't ground any of it in the interests of the average American. So for decades, while Washington politicians built a global system, American wages stagnated. Our great cities and industries were hollowed out. Entire communities were devastated, and our manufacturing plants were shipped off to China. That's what happened when Washington stopped being the capital of the United States and started being the capital of the world. As U.S. ambassador to Germany, I had a front row seat to Donald Trump's America First foreign policy. I wish every American could see how President Trump negotiates on their behalf. I've watched President Trump charm the Chancellor of Germany while insisting that Germany pay its NATO obligations. I was proud to witness President Trump say to foreign leaders, "I don't blame you for wanting America to pay for your security. I actually respect you for out-negotiating the presidents before me. But it stops with me. I won't let the American taxpayer be taken advantage of." Donald Trump's administration has always made clear that our priority is the American people's security. That's the job of all leaders, to put their people first. And we've seen how this strategy has succeeded. In 4 short years, Donald Trump has led even some Washington Democrats to agree on the Chinese threat, on trade deals that benefit America first, on alliances that share responsibility. In 4 years, Donald Trump didn't start any new wars. He brought troops home. He rebuilt the military and signed peace deals that make Americans safer. The Washington elites want you to think this kind of foreign policy is immoral, and so they call it nationalist. That tells you all you need to know. The D.C. crowd thinks when they call Donald Trump a nationalist, they're insulting him, as if the American president isn't supposed to base foreign policy on America's national interests. A return to the Biden way of thinking means America gives the radical terrorist regime in Tehran a plane load of cash in the middle of the night. Well, you see, President Trump also sent an aircraft in the middle of the night to deal with Iran. But that plane was on a different mission. An airstrike to take out the head of Iran's terror machine who plotted the deaths of Americans. But we also must be clear that when those who seek freedom take tremendous personal risk in places like Hong Kong, Tehran, or Minsk, there is no doubt who President Trump's administration supports. We will always stand with the people who fight for their God-given freedoms. Don't be fooled. The Washington establishment is trying to sell you on their candidate. Joe Biden was first elected to the Senate in 1972, 48 years ago. Well, it's actually the typical Washington story. Just this year, 22 Democrats ran for president. They rejected all of the outsiders and nominated the ultimate Washington insider, someone they had to pull out of retirement. Every time Joe Biden offers a new idea, you should ask yourself, why didn't he try that over the last 48 years?
That's right.
Today, the Democrats blame a global pandemic that started in China on President Trump.
Larry, we're seeing a future
and they
president.
still blame Russia for Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016. As acting director of national intelligence, I saw the Democrats' entire case for Russian collusion.
I saw their secrets.
Made me sick to my stomach. The Obama-Biden administration secretly launched a surveillance operation on the Trump campaign and silenced the many brave intelligence officials who spoke up against it. They presented bogus information as facts. They lied to judges. Then they classified anything that undermined their case. And after Donald Trump won the election, when they should have continued the American tradition of helping the president-elect transition into the White House, they tried instead to undercut him even more. Former Vice President Joe Biden asked intelligence officials to uncover the hidden information on President Trump's incoming national security advisor 3 weeks before the inauguration. That's the Democrats. Between surveillance, classifications, leaks, and puppet candidates, they never want the American people to know who's actually calling the shots. But with Donald Trump, you always know exactly who is in charge. Because the answer is you. You're in charge. Not lobbyists, not special interests, not warmongers or China sympathizers or globalization fanatics. With Donald Trump and Mike Pence in the White House, the boss is the American people. President Trump rightly calls his foreign policy America First. America First does not advance the interests of one group of Americans at the expense of another. It has no bias about red or blue, educated or not educated, urban or rural. America First is simply the belief that politicians should focus on the equality and dignity of every American, and that this duty is fulfilled by promoting the safety and wealth of the American people above all else. That's America First. That's the Trump doctrine. And that, my friends, is 4 more years.
Well, a star is born. I mean, what an incredible speech.
You and I are blessed. I just got a text from somebody who's very, very conservative. And you'll notice Rick did not mention that he's gay because he's not there as some interest group. He's there as an American, promoting American interests. This friend of mine said, Blanky, yeah, give your boy Rick a kiss for me. Rick is a friend of ours. We know him personally.
Yes.
And I
we are
want to tell
biased.
you, that's Rick in person. That's Rick.
Yep.
That's what he thinks. It's not sit around and talk about how we can pull one over. He gets it. He gets it instinctively.
Yep.
That is why I said Rick Grinnell is the heir to Trump in my book, 21 Biggest Lies About Donald Trump and You. And tonight, he proved me correct. That was spectacular.
Yeah. It was, and it was conversational. The content was perfect. And he was able, a big part of his role here tonight is to go after the opposing candidate, to go after Joe Biden. And he did it with facts and devastating logic. But it wasn't mean. It wasn't nasty. It wasn't bitchy. It wasn't personal. It was a solid political speech by a solid. So I mean, a star is born. That's the rest of the American people just got to know the Rick Grinnell you and I know.
Well, here's the thing. He also distinguished himself from the Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley could never give that speech. Okay?
Right.
You may say something similar from Tom Cott. But no, Rick Grinnell came out and he didn't mess around. He didn't show any hesitation. He embraced the populist Jacksonian foreign policy that Donald Trump won with, as he correctly pointed out. He pulled no punch. He called Iraq a disaster. I don't think. Look, I'm an Army War College graduate. I mean, it pains me that graduates of my school put that together because it goes against every principle we learned. He called it what it was by its true name, and only one other Republican's been willing to do that, and that's Donald Trump.
Now, I am actually a little surprised he didn't mention that he is the highest-ranking gay American in American political history, because it is significant. You're right. It's not who he is. He doesn't step up and say, "I'm a gay Republican." He just is who he is, and by the way, he happens to be gay. But I think
I think everybody who would find that significant already knows it, and people just getting introduced to him. It really, look, we're about it not mattering.
Right. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
And it's not like this is a moment where, no matter where you come down on, people are talking about the place of Black Americans and the status of Black Americans and what's happening to Black Americans. So if you're a Black American, you talk about that perspective.
Yeah.
Today, what he did was he was coming in talking as an American patriot who went out there and said, "I'm going to defend America's interests overseas." And I got to tell you something. Look, I'm a colonel. I got lots of crusty non-commissioned officers, the sergeants, the petty officers on Twitter who follow me. Okay, for some reason, I'm one officer they'll deal with. And what struck me is these people are supposed to hate a guy like Rick. Rick is gay. Yeah. Rick is urbane. Rick is smooth and polished. But they love him, and they love him because they know he's got their back. They know he will always take care of his guys like he did those Marines at the Berlin embassy. And I remember sitting with him before he went to Germany. And I'm not breaking any confidence here. He goes, "Kurt, you were stationed in Germany. When I go to visit our troops, tell me what I look for." And it wasn't just like one question. We spent a significant amount of time with me telling him, "Here's what you look for. Here's who you talk to. Here's the guy who, find the sergeant major, talk to him." And he listened. And he's the real deal, Larry.
He is. I got to spend the evening with him in Washington, D.C. the night before he left for Germany, when he finally was confirmed and sworn in. And I was at a gathering right outside the White House. And I said, "What are you looking forward to the most?" And me, I'm like, the beer, the bratwurst, the food. He said, "I cannot wait to get to Germany and start carrying out the president's agenda for Europe and for Iran." He is all about serving the president. All right, let's get to Fort McHenry, just up the road from where I am right now in Baltimore, Maryland. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Pence, accompanied by the Second Lady, Mrs. Karen Pence.
Good evening, America. It's an honor to speak to you tonight from the hallowed grounds of Fort McHenry, the site of the very battle that inspired the words of our national anthem. Those words have inspired this land of heroes in every generation since. It was on this site 206 years ago when our young republic heroically withstood a ferocious naval bombardment from the most powerful empire on earth. They came to crush our revolution, to divide our nation, and to end the American experiment. The heroes who held this fort took their stand for life, liberty, freedom, and the American flag. And those ideals have defined our nation. But they were hardly ever mentioned at last week's Democratic National Convention. Instead, Democrats spent 4 days attacking America. Joe Biden said that we were living through a season of darkness. But as President Trump said, where Joe Biden sees American darkness, we see American greatness. In these challenging times, our country needs a president who believes in America, who believes in the boundless capacity of the American people to meet any challenge, defeat any foe, and defend the freedoms we hold dear. America needs 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House. Before I go further, allow me to say a word to the families and communities in the path of Hurricane Laura. Our prayers are with you tonight, and our administration is working closely with authorities in the states that will be impacted. FEMA has mobilized resources and supplies for those in harm's way. This is a serious storm, and we urge all those in the affected areas to heed state and local authorities. Stay safe, and know that we'll be with you every step of the way to support, rescue, respond, and recover in the days and weeks ahead. That's what Americans do. Four years ago, I answered the call to join this ticket because I knew that Donald Trump had the leadership and the vision to make America great again. And for the last 4 years, I've watched this president endure unrelenting attacks, but get up every day and fight to keep the promises that he made to the American people. So with gratitude for the confidence President Donald Trump has placed in me, the support of our Republican Party, and the grace of God, I humbly accept your nomination to run and serve as Vice President of the United States. Serving the American people in this office has been a journey I never expected. It's a journey that would not have been possible without the support of my family, beginning with my wonderful wife, Karen. She's a lifelong school teacher, an incredible mother to our 3 children. And she is one outstanding Second Lady of the United States. I'm so proud of you. And we couldn't be more proud of our 3 children. Marine Corps Captain Michael J. Pence and his wife, Sarah. Our daughter, Charlotte Pence Bond, an author and the wife to Lieutenant Henry Bond, who is currently deployed and serving our nation in the United States Navy.
Naval Academy graduate. Naval Academy graduate.
And our youngest,
we like him
a recent law school grad, our daughter Audrey, and her fiancé, who, like so many other Americans, had to delay their wedding this summer. But we can't wait for Dan to be a part of our family. In addition to my wife and kids, the person who shaped my life the most is also with us tonight. My mom, Nancy. She is the daughter of an Irish immigrant, 87 years young. And Mom follows politics very closely. And the truth be told, sometimes I think I'm actually her second favorite candidate on the Trump-Pence ticket. Thank you, Mom. I love you. Over the past 4 years, I've had the privilege to work closely with our president. I've seen him when the cameras are off. Americans see President Trump in lots of different ways. But there's no doubt how President Trump sees America. He sees America for what it is. A nation that has done more good in this world than any other. A nation that deserves far more gratitude than grievance. And if you want a president who falls silent when our heritage is demeaned or insulted, he's not your man. Now, we came by very different routes to this partnership. And some people think we're a little bit different. But you know, I've learned a few things watching him. Watching him deal with all that we've been through over the past 4 years. He does things in his own way, on his own terms. Not much gets past him. And when he has an opinion, he's liable to share it. He's certainly kept things interesting. But more importantly, President Donald Trump has kept his word to the American people. In a city known for talkers, President Trump is a doer. And few presidents have brought more independence, energy, or determination to that office. 4 years ago, we inherited a military hollowed out by devastating budget cuts, an economy struggling to break out of the slowest recovery since the Great Depression. ISIS controlled a land mass twice the size of Pennsylvania, and we witnessed a steady assault on our most cherished values, freedom of religion and the right to life. That's when President Donald Trump stepped in. And from day one, he kept his word. We rebuilt our military. This president signed the largest increase in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan and created the first new branch of our armed forces in 70 years, the United States Space Force. And with that renewed energy, we also returned American astronauts to space on an American rocket for the first time in nearly 10 years. And after years of scandal that robbed our veterans of the care that you earned in the uniform of the United States, President Trump kept his word again. We reformed the VA, and Veterans Choice is now available for every veteran in America. Our armed forces and our veterans fill this land of heroes. And many join us tonight in this historic fort. Tonight we have among us 4 recipients of the Medal of Honor. Six recipients of the Purple Heart. A Gold Star mother of a gallant Navy SEAL. And wounded warriors from Soldier Strong, a group that serves our injured veterans every day. We are honored by your presence, and we thank you for your service. With heroes just like these, we defend this nation every day. And under this commander-in-chief, we've taken the fight to radical Islamic terrorists on our terms, on their soil. Last year, American armed forces took the last inch of ISIS territory, crushed their caliphate, and took down their leader without one American casualty. And I was there when President Trump gave the order to take out the world's most dangerous terrorist. Iran's top general will never harm another American because Qasem Soleimani is gone. My fellow Americans, you deserve to know. Joe Biden criticized President Trump following those decisions. Decisions to rid the world of 2 terrorist leaders. But it's not surprising, because history records that Joe Biden even opposed the operation that took down Osama bin Laden. It's no wonder that the Secretary of Defense under the Obama-Biden administration once said that Joe Biden has been, and I quote, wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. So we've stood up to our enemies, and we've stood with our allies. Like when President Trump kept his word and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the State of Israel, setting the stage for the first Arab country to recognize Israel in 26 years. Closer to home, we appointed more than 200 conservative judges to our federal courts. We supported the right to life and all the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution, including the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And when it came to the economy, President Trump kept his word and then some. We passed the largest tax cut and reform in American history. We rolled back more federal red tape than any administration ever had. We unleashed American energy and fought for free and fair trade. And in our first 3 years, businesses large and small created more than 7 million good-paying jobs, including 500,000 manufacturing jobs all across America. Our country became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 70 years. Unemployment rates for African Americans and Hispanic Americans hit the lowest level ever recorded. And on this 100th anniversary of the woman's right to vote, I'm proud to report that under President Donald Trump, we achieved the lowest unemployment rate for women in 65 years. And more Americans working than ever before. In our first 3 years, we built the greatest economy in the world. We made America great again. And then the coronavirus struck from China. Before the first case of the coronavirus spread within the United States, the president took unprecedented action and suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, that action saved untold American lives. And I can tell you firsthand, it bought us invaluable time to launch the greatest national mobilization since World War II. President Trump marshaled the full resources of our federal government from the outset. He directed us to forge a seamless partnership with governors across America in both political parties. We partnered with private industry to reinvent testing and produce supplies that were distributed to hospitals around the land. Today, we're conducting more than 800,000 tests a day, and we have coordinated the delivery of billions of pieces of personal protective equipment for our amazing doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers. We saw to the manufacture of 100,000 ventilators in 100 days. And no one who required a ventilator was ever denied a ventilator in the United States. We built hospitals, surged military medical personnel, and enacted an economic rescue package that saved 50 million American jobs. As we speak, we're developing a growing number of treatments known as therapeutics, including convalescent plasma, that are saving lives all across America. Now, last week, Joe Biden said that no miracle is coming. Well, what Joe doesn't seem to understand is that America is a nation of miracles. And I'm proud to report that we're on track to have the world's first safe, effective coronavirus vaccine by the end of this year. After all the sacrifice in this year like no other, all the hardship, we're finding our way forward again. But tonight, our hearts are with all the families who've lost loved ones and have family members still struggling with serious illness. In this country, we mourn with those who mourn. We grieve with those who grieve. And this night, I know that millions of Americans will pause and pray for God's comfort for each of you. You know, our country doesn't get through such a time unless its people find strength within. The response of doctors, nurses, first responders, farmers, factory workers, truckers, and everyday Americans who put the health and safety of their neighbors first has been nothing short of heroic. Veronica Sayez put on her scrubs every day. Day in and day out, went to work in one of New York City's busiest hospitals. She stayed on the job, put in the long hours until it was done, and then got back in her neighborhood and helped neighbors and friends struggling. Her brother William is a New York City firefighter. And they're both emblematic of heroes all across this country. They're with us tonight. And I say to them and to all of you, you have earned the admiration of the American people, and we will always be grateful for your service and care. Thanks to the courage and compassion of the American people, we're slowing the spread. We're protecting the vulnerable. And we're saving lives. And we're opening up America again. Because of the strong foundation that President Trump poured in our first 3 years, We've already gained back 9.3 million jobs in the last 3 months alone. And we're not just opening up America again. We're opening up America's schools. And I'm proud to report that my wife, Karen, that school teacher I've been married to, will be returning to her classroom next week. And so to all of our heroic teachers and faculty and staff, thank you for being there for our kids. We're going to stay with you every step of the way. In the days ahead, as we open up America again, I promise you, we'll continue to put the health of America first. And as we work to bring this economy back, we all have a role to play, and we all have a choice to make. On November 3rd, you need to ask yourself, who do you trust to rebuild this economy? A career politician who presided over the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression? Or a proven leader who created the greatest economy in the world? The choice is clear. To bring America all the way back, we need 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House. My fellow Americans, we're passing through a time of testing. But in the midst of this global pandemic, just as our nation had begun to recover, we've seen violence and chaos in the streets of our major cities. President Trump and I will always support the right of Americans to peaceful protest. But rioting and looting is not peaceful protest. Tearing down statues is not free speech. And those who do so will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Last week, Joe Biden didn't say one word about the violence and chaos engulfing cities across this country. So let me be clear. The violence must stop, whether in Minneapolis, Portland, or Kenosha. Too many heroes have died defending our freedom to see Americans strike each other down. We will have law and order on the streets of this country for every American of every race and creed and color. President Trump and I know that the men and women that put on the uniform of law enforcement are the best of us. Every day, when they walk out that door, they consider our lives more important than their own. People like Dave Patrick Underwood, an officer in the Department of Homeland Security's Federal Protective Service, who was shot and killed during the riots in Oakland, California. Dave's heroism is emblematic of the heroes that serve in blue every day. And we're privileged tonight to be joined by his sister, Angela. Angela, we say to you, we grieve with your family. And America will never forget or fail to honor Officer Dave Patrick Underwood. The American people know we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement and standing with our African American neighbors to improve the quality of their lives, education, jobs, and safety. And from the first days of this administration, we've done both. And we will keep supporting law enforcement and keep supporting our African American and minority communities across this land for 4 more years.
Hey, I know that guy. And I know a couple of those guys. A lot of Maryland Republicans in the crowd here, part of the Maryland
Joe
Republican
Biden says
Party.
that America is systemically racist and that law enforcement in America has, and I quote, an implicit bias against minorities. When asked whether he'd support cutting funding to law enforcement, Joe Biden replied, yes, absolutely. Joe Biden would double down on the very policies that are leading to violence in America's cities. The hard truth is, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America. And under President Trump, we will always stand with those who stand on the thin blue line, and we're not going to defund the police, not now, not ever. My fellow Americans, we're passing through a time of testing, but soon we will come to a time for choosing. Joe Biden has referred to himself as a transition candidate, and many were asking, transition to what? But last week, Democrats didn't talk very much about their agenda. And if I were them, I wouldn't either. I mean, Bernie Sanders did tell his followers that Joe Biden would be the most liberal president in modern times. In fact, he said, and I quote, that many of the ideas he fought for, that just a few years ago were considered radical, are now mainstream in the Democratic Party. At the root of their agenda is the belief that America is driven by envy, not aspiration. That millions of Americans harbor ill will toward our neighbors instead of loving our neighbors as ourselves. The radical left believes that the federal government must be involved in every aspect of our lives to correct those American wrongs. They believe the federal government needs to dictate how Americans live, how we should work, how we should raise our children, and in the process deprive our people of freedom, prosperity, and security. Their agenda is based on government control. Our agenda is based on freedom. Where President Trump cut taxes, Joe Biden wants to raise taxes by nearly $4 trillion. Where this president achieved energy independence for the United States, Joe Biden would abolish fossil fuels, end fracking, and impose a regime of climate change regulations that would drastically increase the cost of living for working families. Where we fought for free and fair trade, and this president stood up to China and ended the era of economic surrender, Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China. He wants to repeal all the tariffs that are leveling the playing field for American workers. And he actually criticized President Trump for suspending all travel to China at the outset of this pandemic. Joe Biden is for open borders, sanctuary cities, free lawyers and health care for illegal immigrants. And President Trump, he secured our border and built nearly 300 miles of that border wall. Joe Biden wants to end school choice. And President Trump believes that every parent should have the right to choose where their children go to school, regardless of their income or area code. President Trump has stood without apology for the sanctity of human life every day of this administration. Joe Biden, he supports taxpayer funding of abortion right up to the moment of birth. When you consider their agenda, it's clear. Joe Biden would be nothing more than a Trojan horse for the radical left. The choice in this election has never been clearer, and the stakes have never been higher. Last week, Joe Biden said democracy's on the ballot. And the truth is, our economic recovery is on the ballot. Law and order are on the ballot. But so are things far more fundamental and foundational to our country. In this election, it's not so much whether America will be more conservative or more liberal, more Republican or more Democrat. The choice in this election is whether America remains America. It's whether we will leave to our children and our grandchildren a country grounded in our highest ideals of freedom, free markets, and the unalienable right to life and liberty, or whether we will leave them a country that's fundamentally transformed into something else. We stand at a crossroads, America. President Trump has set our nation on a path of freedom and opportunity. Joe Biden would set America on a path of socialism and decline. But we're not going to let it happen. President Donald Trump believes in America and in the goodness of the American people, the boundless potential of every American to live out their dreams in freedom. And every day, President Trump has been fighting to protect the promise of America. Every day, our president has been fighting to expand the reach of the American dream. And every day, President Donald Trump has been fighting for you. And now it's our turn to fight for him. On this night in the company of heroes, I'm deeply grateful. Deeply grateful for the privilege of serving as Vice President of this great nation and to have the opportunity to serve again. I pray to be worthy of it, and I will give that duty all that's in me. In the year 2020, the American people have had more than our share of challenges. But thankfully, we have a president with the toughness, energy, and resolve to see us through. Now, those traits actually run in our national character. As the invading force learned on approach to this fort in September of 1814, against fierce and sustained bombardment, our young country was defended by heroes, not so different from those who are with us tonight. The enemy was counting on them to quit, but they never did. Fort McHenry held, and when morning came, our flag was still here. My fellow Americans, we're going through a time of testing. But if you look through the fog of these challenging times, you will see our flag is still there today. That star-spangled banner still waves over the land of the free and the home of the brave. From these hallowed grounds, American patriots in generations gone by did their part to defend freedom. Now it's our turn. So let's run the race marked out for us. let's fix our eyes on Old Glory and all she represents. Let's fix our eyes on this land of heroes and let their courage inspire. And let's fix our eyes on the author and perfecter of our faith and our freedom. And never forget that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. That means freedom always wins. My fellow Americans, thank you for the honor of addressing you tonight and the opportunity to run and serve again as your Vice President. I leave here today inspired. And I leave here today more convinced than ever that we will do in our time as Americans have done throughout our long and storied past. We will defend our freedom and our way of life. We will re-elect our president and principled Republican leaders across the land. And with President Donald Trump in the White House for 4 more years, and with God's help, we will make America great again. Again. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
There you have it. Vice President Mike Pence before a crowd of, I'd say, about 500 at Fort McHenry, just outside, in Baltimore, Maryland, right at the inner harbor of Maryland. And some quick thoughts, Kurt Schlichter. I jotted down some notes of some of the things he said, but overall, I got to say again, compared to that bizarre thing that we saw last week with, is that the president coming out? That looks like the president and Melania Trump are there as well, and they're going to be joining the vice president. That's cool. If he says something, we will stop and take a listen to what the president has to say. There is nothing unsafe. There is nothing against the CDC guidelines or the state of Maryland guidelines, which I am very familiar with regard to COVID-19 that prevented this speech from happening. Everything here was fine. There is no reason why the Democrats couldn't do this, but they didn't. They were in little rooms somewhere. And it makes such a difference to have an audience. It makes such a difference to give a speech like this, Kurt. It's huge. Oh, Kurt, you're muted still, bud. Click the mute off.
When I am. I'm unmuted. I should be unmuted. Liberate Kurt. Oh, my God.
Doesn't that make a huge difference?
This is the worst thing ever. It does make a huge difference. You can feel the energy. And you're like I said yesterday, you're a production guy. Look at how they staged this. This is fantastic.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's perfect. And they picked a location where, you could have, like I said, several hundred people, but they are socially distanced, but it fills the space. Oh, they're going to have a country singer sing a song here. Hold on. Let's take a listen here. I think it's going to be the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh,
okay, here we go.
Can you
I'm going to stand.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Wow, what a moment. Under the battle flag, or the battle flag of the United States of America during the War of 1812 with 15 stars, Trace Atkins singing the national anthem just about 100 yards away from where Francis Scott Key penned that poem that became our national anthem. Trace Atkins, of course, a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice, so he goes way back with Donald Trump. Kurt, look at that. Disabled people with walkers. And these are disabled people with walkers who need assistance walking. They rose to their feet. And millionaire spoiled brat athletes will not stand up.
Yamiche Amidou, or whatever the hell her name is, had a tweet just a few minutes ago where she trashed Madison Cawthorn for standing up and saying he was showing disrespect to all the athletes who wouldn't stand. And it was like, well, yeah, that's right. They're obnoxious babies. They're idiots. They're scumbags. They don't deserve respect. And I think heaping contempt on him is perfectly appropriate. Screw you. So there we go.
You know what? As you know, Kurt, our country is so divided, and there is so much anger and vitriol and hate in this country, and you write about it so well in your columns on a regular basis at Townhall. I will still never understand how there are tens of millions of people who will watch this tonight on MSNBC, watch what we just watched, and feel anger and contempt for what we just saw, instead of the pride and emotion that you and I feel and so many others feel. I just don't get it.
It's bizarre and alien to me too, but showing pride doesn't get them what they want, which is power and recognition. Remember, the left is composed of nobodies who've accomplished nothing. These are losers, Larry. Yeah. Their whole world is about the self-image they get by looking down on better people than they are. And we elected Donald Trump because we're sick of their shit.
That's right. That's absolutely right. All right, let's wrap things up here. Talk about imagery. I don't know. They will somehow figure out a way to top it tomorrow night, certainly for the president. But that was a hell of a visual, a hell of a speech from the vice president. He delivered attacks on Joe Biden. He delivered praise for Donald Trump and a promise of what another 4 more years might look like. A couple of things that stuck out to me. One thing he said about the president early on, that he has seen him face relentless attacks and still get up every day to do the job he promised to do. Kurt, that matters, I think. I hear that from listeners on my radio show a lot, that as long as Donald Trump keeps fighting, they're going to keep fighting. You know, he symbolizes that.
A leader's important. Leadership is important. And, you know, people follow leaders. And obviously, that sounds simple, duh. But really, leaders can do amazing things. When you're trying to get people to charge up a hill that's full of the enemy trying to kill you, they're not going to go because somebody sends them a memo from a basement. Okay? You've got to have, that lieutenant or captain there turning around saying, okay, fix bayonets and follow me. And the guys go, well, if the captain can do it, I can do it. Come on, guys, let's go. And that's how it's done. And Trump gets that. Trump puts his ass on the line. And he has lost money. He has lost friends. He has lost social status. He is constantly threatened. Not just with losing. They want to throw him in jail. They want to throw his family in jail. This isn't a joke. They're not. He can't just shrug and be done with this. This is a real risk he's taken, and he does it, and he doesn't care. and he wins. Thank God Trump came along.
Vice President Pence spent a lot of time talking about the violence in our streets. A couple of things that stood out to me. Here's one line that I thought was great. He said, "America deserves more gratitude than a grievance." Again, in counter distinction to the message last week.
He is speaking to the people who look at this and go, this just isn't right. You can't just attack. Right. You can't just burn somebody's business down because you're ticked off because some jackass wouldn't comply with a cop. And it's very reasonable not to to go grab a knife.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
and by the way, it's also not everything's fine in America. These people don't have a point. They have nothing to complain about. Everything's perfect. No, all he said was, the country deserves more gratitude than grievance. In other words, as bad as things might be for you, you're still a hell of a lot better off here than you would be anywhere else. How about a little gratitude, a little humility?
Absolutely. We have one political party that is based entirely on grievance, entirely on envy, entirely on hate. The Democrat Party is not the party of the working man. It's the party of the New York elitist, the academic, the Hollywood creep. It is the party of the rich. It is the party of the criminal and the lazy. That's what the Democrats are now. They used to be a party of the working man, but they don't want the working man anymore. And it doesn't matter what color you are. They don't want you. Because if you're working and supporting your family, you don't need them.
Right. That's right. And that's why they act like you're part of the problem. You're privileged if you're working and supporting your family. Another thing, this is the line I think that got him his standing ovation in the middle of the speech. "The violence must stop, whether in Minneapolis, Portland, or Kenosha. Too many heroes have died defending our freedoms to see Americans strike each other down. We will have law and order for every American, for every race and creed and color." They're going right at the violence in the streets, Kurt, and it's unwavering and strong.
Well, absolutely, and the Democrats are in a panic. You saw Biden come out today, and he tried his best to gently beg the rioters not to riot. And if you look at Minneapolis, they're not listening. I don't know if they are in Kenosha or not. They, you know, and that's what's interesting is if Joe Biden can come out and say, "Hey, stop rioting," and they stop rioting, doesn't that kind of raise the question of why he didn't do it 3 months ago?
Yeah, well, correct. And also, by the way, it's pretty obvious why he decided today to come out. Don Lemon sort of gave away the store last night. He wants them to stop rioting, not because it's illegal, not because it's immoral, not because innocent people are being victimized. No, because it's helping Trump. He wants them to stop rioting because of politics.
So it's reasonable to say he wanted them to riot when he thought it helped them.
If it helped.
Which, in fact, he did.
Another very strong message on this item. Mike Pence said, "The hard truth is you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America." Hard to argue, considering they want to get rid of the police. One last thing.
I have an article for Townhall. Let me just say real quick. I have an article coming out for Townhall tomorrow. It should be coming out in about 30 minutes. And it's the 5 reasons Donald Trump's going to win. And the premise is, let's do the postmortem now. Let's say what all the smart blue check Twitter people will say on November 4th when Trump wins. Duh, it's obvious Trump was going to win from the beginning, because you can't win an election in America, among other reasons, by being for tax increases, against the police, for the criminals, for the rioters, and for China. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And we're starting to see it come around. I expect a significant bounce on trustworthy polls from this RNC. I think Pence did exactly what he needs to do. We saw superstars tonight, including but not limited to our friend Rick Grinnell and Madison Cawthorn, another great guy. We're going to see more of both of those guys. And there's just too many to list. Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And actually, we should probably, that's great. You gave us a preview of tomorrow's column, and I think it's a bold column because you know that if for some reason Donald Trump doesn't win, they will, Jim Swift will bring this up, Kurt, and he will make fun of you.
Well, if Cardi B wants to step to me again, that's fine. I'll take him and hit him over the head with a steam table.
We will wrap it up there. A really great night and a stirring finish with Vice President Mike Pence live from Fort McHenry in Baltimore. It was I clocked in, I think, around 35 minutes, finishing with Trace Adkins singing the national anthem right there under the flag that inspired the Star Spangled Banner. Yeah, that was a great moment. Tomorrow night is the big night with President Trump. As if this wasn't a big enough night, tomorrow night will be night 4 with President Donald Trump, and we will continue our live streaming coverage of it with commentary and analysis here. I'll see you then. Chris Stigall here, Kurt Schlichter, a few other surprises. And Kurt, thanks a lot. Tell California we said hi.
I will say, California, hi. My neighbors are freaking out.
I think they're used to your shenanigans by now.
I think
good night, everybody.
I think we're going to see. Bye, Larry.
Keep it here at townhall.com, and we'll see you tomorrow.